a peaceful life on Earth. Can you imagine it? But suddenly, boom. Terrifying monsters appear, erasing everything in their path, yet at the same time, new humans emerge, people gifted with superpowers capable of standing against the darkness. And then there's our protagonist, just an ordinary toilet janitor, burdened with his own drama, a sick mother and cruel people who mock him every day. But even in this world, there are still those who haven't lost their humanity, right? During one of his usual cleaning shifts, the school is suddenly attacked by the strongest of all monsters, a creature that devours students with ease, no matter how hard they fight or what powers they use. And when the only person who ever reached out to him is in danger, our hero Gui saves her and carries her to the shelter, where there's no place for him because he's a nobody. Now he's left alone, face to face with a horrifying monster. Guy fights back desperately, but what can a mere human do against such a creature? The monster devours the boy as easily as if he were a French fry. But wait, what's this? Guy refuses to die, fighting with everything he has. He doesn't understand why this is happening to him. In the final seconds of his life, a red sphere appears before his eyes. Moments later, the monster screams in agony as its body is torn apart by an unknown force. In the end, the monster consumes itself. Afterward, a strange glowing sphere remains, and inside, someone is there. Yes, it's our hero, Gui. But now, he's no longer just human. He's a half-dragon. He finds himself not in a crater, but in a sterile hospital room. He questions his own survival, remembering being devoured whole. But a strange glowing mark on his palm catches his attention. It looks like a miniature galaxy, a remnant of his new power. Suddenly, a stream of energy erupts from the strange mark. It forms into a tiny, furious creature, still demanding its body back. The chibi dragon throws a tantrum, insulted by his confusion. It boasts about its magnificent horns and razor-sharp fangs. It proudly declares itself the king of all EVAs, the strongest species in existence. But Kurobo Gui remembers the god of destruction, pointing out the obvious difference. The tiny god gets defensive, insisting the patterns on its horns are identical. To prove its point, it decides to reveal its true name, known by few in the universe. It strikes a dramatic pose, ready to unveil its legendary title. But the grand reveal is cut short by a sudden case of amnesia. Awkward. Having reached his limit, Kurobo Gui decides to try a more hands-on approach. He unleashes a flurry of frustrated blows on the squishy little monster. He reminds the creature of the lives it took, vowing to make it atone for its destruction. The tiny god argues that revenge is pointless, since he's already been eaten. It insists that Kurobo Gui's new body is literally made from its own. This revelation, and the tiny horn now sprouting from his head, leaves him stunned. The creature explains how it was pulled apart from the inside by his power, and now it's been reduced to this less than intimidating form. It screams that his body is now a vessel for the strongest species in existence. But their bizarre argument is cut short by the sound of approaching footsteps. The door to his room slides open with a sudden whoosh. Standing in the doorway is none other than the Ice Wall Witch, Hyuga Orion. Her stern expression melts into one of pure, tearful relief. He recognizes her immediately, but she introduces herself anyway. He casually suggests they use first names, completely ignoring the rank gap. But the friendly reunion is cut short by a stern lecture about his disobedience. He simply explains that he did what he could, a janitor's humble creed. Her frustration manifests as a sudden, chilling frost filling the air. The temperature in the room plummets, a side effect of annoying an S rank. She unleashes her aura, demanding to know the truth of that day. She asks how he survived and why the legendary beast simply vanished. But Kurobo Gui is stuck on one detail. He's been out for a whole week. She confirms his long nap and prepares to show him what he's missed. She shows him a news report detailing the aftermath of the attack. Officially, the monster vanished, and all surveillance was destroyed. The only lead is a single eyewitness who saw a boy at the scene. But with no other details, the world is left completely in the dark. The gears in Kurobo Gui's head slowly begin to turn. He realizes with a jolt that the mysterious survivor is him. Hyuga Orion confirms his suspicion, demanding he tell her everything. She's not just a student, but an S-ranker on a mission. An impressive resume for a high schooler. Her power flares as she pressures him for the truth. But Kurobo Gui plays dumb, claiming he can't remember a thing. He starts to confess what happened that day. But the tiny god telepathically screams at him for being a fool. Hyuga Orion notices his sudden pain, but he plays it off as a headache. The creature warns that humanity will kill him if they learn the truth. Kurobo Gui hesitates, caught between his conscience and his safety. He briefly agrees that lying might be the only way to survive, but his stubborn pride refuses to let him take the easy way out. He grabs the tiny god, declaring that lying is not an option, a man of principle, even when it's a terrible idea. He reveals everything, showing her the miniature god as proof of his new power. The S-rank elite can only stare, her mind struggling to process the truth. But Hyuga Orion just stares, completely baffled by his empty hands. The tiny god realizes she can't see or hear him at all. Her patience gone, she summons a shard of ice, demanding the truth. But their tense standoff is interrupted by a shadow falling from the sky. The tiny god looks up, recognizing the approaching entity. Hyuga! Orin presses on, telling him humanity's fate is at stake. The creature screams at Kurobohigui to run, a warning he doesn't understand. A winged beast shatters the window, crashing into the hospital room. The S-rank elite shields herself as our boy realizes he's out of time. Hyuga. Orin prepares to fight, her power swirling around her hands. Hyuga Orion summons her absolute ice wall, shielding them from the beast. The sheer force of the impact sends them skidding across the floor. She recognizes the creature as another EVA, but far more powerful. The tiny god panics, screaming for Kurobohigui to escape immediately. It warns that this new monster is beyond S-rank and has come for him. The creature explains that most EVAs on Earth are its former punching bags, but now that it's weakened, this new predator has come to finish the job. And by finish the job, it means eating Kurobohigui's body. A truly terrible roommate situation. The winged beast slams into the barrier, its power cracking the ice. Hyuga Orion strains, her ultimate defense failing against this new threat. The winged beast shatters her defense with a single brutal strike. Kurobohigui shoves her back, urging her to run while he draws its fire. But the S-rank elite refuses to abandon a civilian in need. She reaffirms her duty, declaring she will protect him at all costs. Hyuga Orion unleashes a storm of 1,000 ice pillars. The attack lands, seemingly skewering the massive creature from all sides. She boasts that a monster of this level is no match for her. Famous last words. But her confidence evaporates as the beast stands completely unharmed. She realizes with horror that her ice was instantly melted away. In response, the winged EVA begins to charge a devastating counterattack. Hyuga Orion screams for him to hide, preparing to shield him with her own body. But the tiny god sees a perfect chance for a tactical retreat. It urges him to escape while the monster is focused on the Ice Wall Witch. But instead of running away, Kurobohigui charges straight toward the beast. Hyuga Orion yells at him to stop, reminding him that he's completely powerless. But a familiar defiant smile spreads across his face. He declares that if the monster is after him, then he'll be its opponent. His reckless taunt works, drawing the creature's undivided attention. And now that he has it, he realizes he has absolutely no follow-up plan. He spots a tree below, forming a desperate strategy to lead the beast away. The tiny god panics, furious that he's risking its new body. But Kurobohigui yells back that they have no other choice. He pushes off the ground, his new power surging through him. And with a single explosive leap, he soars into the sky. He can't believe what's happening, his mind reeling from the sensation. For the first time, the powerless janitor is flying high above the city. The rush of power feels incredible, a feeling he's never known. But his excitement turns to panic as he realizes he has no exit strategy. Gravity reasserts itself, sending our hero plummeting back to Earth. He tells the tiny god to stay calm, determined to figure out a landing. The runes on his arm flare to life, a strange power coursing through him. He hits the ground like a meteor, a brilliant flash of blue energy. He lands perfectly, cracking the earth beneath his feet. Not bad for a first flight. He braces for the impact, expecting every bone in his body to shatter. But to his utter shock, he feels absolutely nothing. He questions how he could survive a fall from that height without a scratch. The tiny god smugly explains that it lent him a bit of its power. Just then, a blast of energy obliterates the spot they were just standing. The winged beast descends, and the tiny god urges him to run. With a terrified scream, Kurobohigui sprints away from the diving predator. The tiny god offers a simple, terrifying deal in exchange for its help. It warns that the winged beast will obliterate everything in its path. The choice is stark. Sacrifice his body or watch everyone die. With a demonic grin, it presses him for an immediate answer. Kurobohigui is completely stunned by the impossible ultimatum. He demands to know what the creature means by handing over his body. The tiny god claims the body is rightfully its own, just on a long-term lease. It reminds him that his recent superhuman jump was only possible with its power. But there's no time for debate as the two-headed beast closes in fast. He weighs the creature's words against the memory of countless lives lost. But Kurobohigui refuses, vowing never to let the monster repeat its massacre. He's forced to dive for cover as the winged beast unleashes another blast. The tiny god realizes the predator knows this body is durable and isn't holding back. But his desperate escape is cut short by the sound of a terrified scream. He spots a hospital patient in a wheelchair, left behind in the chaos. The winged beast turns its attention to the helpless civilian. Without a second thought, Kurobohi Gui charges, trying to draw its fire. The tiny god screams at him to stop, insisting he just hand over the body. But our boy realizes if his body is truly the strongest, then he has to act. And with a defiant roar, he throws his first real punch as a new man. His fist connects, a desperate blow against an unstoppable force. But the winged beast doesn't even flinch from the hit. Kurobohi Gui is stunned, realizing his punch had no effect at all. The tiny god reminds him that without its will, he's just a powerless human. In response, the winged beast charges a blast of pure destructive energy. The tiny god makes its final offer: hand over the body, or everyone dies. It promises to deal with the predator if he just gives up control. It screams that the entire hospital is about to be wiped off the map. A compelling argument, to be fair. But Kurobohi Gui has had enough of its panicked negotiations. He furiously reminds the creature that this whole mess is its fault to begin with. He rejects the creature's offer, flipping the script entirely. The winged beast unleashes its attack, a torrent of pure destruction. But Kurobohi Gui calls its bluff with a defiant, desperate grin. He frames it as a win-win. They can take out a major threat together. Cornered, the tiny god reluctantly agrees, demanding his hand. It pours a fraction of its immense power into Kurobohi Gui's palm. The miniature black hole swirls to life, a galaxy of raw potential. A surge of cosmic energy floods his body, a feeling he's never known. He prepares to unleash the attack, aiming it safely into the sky. The system reveals he's using a mere fraction of a percent of the beast's power, a truly humbling statistic. He unleashes a torrent of pure cosmic energy from his fist. His attack meets the winged beast's blast in a cataclysmic clash. The two forces collide, threatening to tear the very sky apart. But the winged beast's power begins to overwhelm their desperate defense. The predator pours on the pressure, confident in its victory. Kurobohi Gui screams that they're losing, but the tiny god refuses to be underestimated. With a final defiant roar, their power surges forward, turning the tide. The winged beast can only watch in horror as its own attack is forced back. The blue energy completely engulfs the monster, a pillar of righteous fury. The beam pierces straight through the beast, a final, decisive blow. Meanwhile, a mysterious woman in a wheelchair watches from afar. In his mind, Kurobohi Gui relives the moment he faced annihilation. A system message appears. The free trial of his god-tier power has ended. He marvels at the sheer force he just unleashed, the power of a king. But the weight of this new reality is already settling in. The immense power overload sends him crashing back to the ground. Just as he loses consciousness, footsteps approach the crater. Hyuga Orion arrives to find an unbelievable scene, the janitor and a dead dragon. She sprints across the battlefield, her mind reeling from the sight. Staring at the Eva's corpse, she struggles to understand what just happened. She struggles to believe the powerless janitor was responsible. Kurobohi Gui awakens not in a crater, but in a grand, sterile hall. The first thing he registers is the pleasant aroma of tea. A stern-looking man in a military uniform offers him a cup. It's a surprisingly civilized welcome after being eaten by a dragon. Our boy is understandably confused by the sudden hospitality. The man explains they recovered him after his little dragon-slaying incident. He reveals they are in the Academy's VIP underground shelter. He introduces himself as Nishiki Ryagan, an S-ranker and the school's principal. Kurobohi Gui recognizes the legendary name, clutching a strange new item. Nishiki Ryagan is the legendary soldier who defeated this very same Eva years ago. He's also technically Kurobohi's boss, and he'd appreciate a little respect. Our boy immediately recognizes he's in way over his head with this guy. He then questions why they're in the Academy's underground training facility. His attention is suddenly drawn to a familiar and slightly annoyed face. A wave of pure relief washes over him, glad to see Hyuga is okay. The S-rank prodigy is uncharacteristically flustered by his simple kindness. Just then, another figure wheels into the conversation, asking about the attack. She introduces herself as Unagi Senri, an A-ranker, thanking him for his help. Kurobohi recognizes her uniform, realizing she's a student from the academy. He takes in the room, realizing he's the only unranked person present. The principal cuts to the chase, but not before offering some homemade snacks. The cute animal-shaped cookies don't exactly match the principal's stern demeanor. As Kurobohi happily helps himself, the principal gets straight to the point. The question is so blunt, Kurobohi spits his tea across the room. He demands to know how they could possibly know his secret. Hyuga realizes with a jolt that she hasn't told them anything yet. But the principal calmly reveals they've been monitoring him all along. The revelation hits Kurobohi Gui with the force of a physical blow. Nishiki begins to explain the nature of element, the cosmic substance from the Evas. He explains element is the Eva's energy source and the origin of human abilities. A substance so elusive technology can't detect it, but Unagi Senri's power can. Kurobohi realizes his meeting with her was no coincidence. They were testing him. The principal confirms it, revealing they were searching for the strongest species. He speaks of the legendary Eva that ravaged Tokyo 8 years prior. A monster so powerful, it's considered a threat on par with a nuclear warhead. Suddenly, the conversation takes a very sharp turn, with a blade at Kurobohi's throat. Nishiki declares that any potential risk must be eliminated. It's his duty. Kurobohi is stunned, unable to comprehend the principal's impossible speed. The empty chair is a chilling testament to the S-ranker's terrifying power. The principal seethes with regret, vowing to destroy the very monster Kurobohi now holds, a promise that does very little to comfort the kid with a sword to his neck. But a familiar voice cuts through the tension, pleading for him to stop. Hyuga argues that if one nuke-level threat exists, more could appear. She insists that using his power, not destroying it, is humanity's only hope. The principal seems to consider her words, but the blade doesn't move. Finally, he relents, admitting there's logic in her desperate plea. He agrees that the best way to fight a monster is with another monster, but he refuses to hand a teenager the keys to the apocalypse, a task Unagi accepts with a suspiciously cheerful smile. Unagi Senri leans back with a disarmingly cheerful smile. Without warning, she grabs his wrist, her focus on his new mark. Kurobohi Gui flinches, questioning her sudden invasive action. She marvels at the tiny, terrified dragon spirit within his palm. The so-called strongest species looks like it needs a hug and a lawyer. Unagi decides her new subject requires much more serious observation. Her gaze turns skyward, a strange, knowing smile on her face. She believes that every human contains their own personal universe. And now, she intends to explore the one hidden inside Kurobohi Gui. She leans in close, asking what kind of cosmos he holds within. She activates her power, celestial observation, peering into his inner world. And with a gleeful shout, she dives headfirst into his consciousness. She finds herself floating in a vast cosmic expanse. This inner universe represents his body, the stars his element. She realizes he wasn't powerless, just had a tiny amount of element. But then she notices something strange. The elements are moving. They're all being drawn towards a single dark point in the distance. She realizes with a jolt they're not just moving, they're being consumed. A massive, all-consuming void dominates his inner world. As she's pulled in, she finally understands. His ability is a black hole. Her consciousness is dragged towards the void, a cosmic tourist in a very bad neighborhood. The pull is immense, and even her powerful will is no match for it. Her very essence is twisted and stretched by the overwhelming force, and with a final, silent scream, she's swallowed by the darkness. But instead of annihilation, she finds herself in a strange, empty space. A sudden, crushing pressure slams down on her from all sides. She realizes this is the true gravity of a black hole, a force beyond comprehension. This power is something else entirely, an alpha ability that defies all logic. But instead of retreating, her curiosity drives her even deeper into the abyss. And at the center of it all, she finds the source, a black sphere containing the dragon's very soul. She stares at the dormant dragon, the so-called strongest species. But the spirit awakens, and it is not happy to have a visitor. It lunges forward, intent on devouring this mental intruder. Its jaws unhinge, a spiritual echo of the real monster's attack. Her power is forcibly canceled, yanking her back to the real world. She snaps back to her body, gasping for air and questioning her own survival. Hyuga rushes to her side, alarmed by her terrified screams. Kurobohi Gui just sits there, wondering if the psychic evaluation is over. The principal offers her a cup to calm down, though Hyuga notes it's just water. She downs the entire cup, still reeling from her trip into the abyss. Unagi Senri is still trembling from her terrifying psychic journey. The principal cuts through the silence, demanding her observation results. She confirms their suspicions. His alpha ability is a black hole. The void was even absorbing his own element, hiding his true potential. And inside that void, she found the spirit of the devoured dragon. Nishiki demands to know the state of the imprisoned monster. With a shudder, she admits the spirit is still hostile and attacked her. In a flash of steel, the principal draws his blade. And for the second time today, Kurobohi Gui has a sword to his neck. Hyuga screams at him, horrified by his sudden aggression. The principal explains his reasoning. The dragon spirit is a threat. If the spirit breaks free, it could unleash the Eva's full power on the world. The tiny dragon spirit offers its power, urging Kurobohi to fight back. Kurobohi calmly translates the offer, much to everyone's surprise. Unagi explains his power separated the Eva's body and soul, but the principal sees this as an even greater threat. He refuses to let a walking nuke be influenced by a hostile spirit, but Kurobohi Gui grabs the blade with his bare hand. He declares he's lived his whole life powerless and won't be tempted now. The principal remains unconvinced, demanding proof of his resolve. But the principal's idea of proof is a sword straight through the chest. Kurobohi Gui screams in agony, his life fading for the second time today. The tiny dragon spirit roars in fury, enraged by the damage to its new vessel. A torrent of raw, untamed energy erupts from the fatal wound. Unagi screams a warning, sensing S+ rank power overloading his body. The principal stands firm, declaring his grim duty to eliminate the strongest species. Kurobohi's eyes glow white-hot as the Eva's power consumes him from within. He floats helplessly, a conduit for a power he was never meant to hold. Nishiki Ryogen watches the cataclysm he's unleashed, his resolve unshaken. He classifies Kurobohi Gui as the ultimate threat and prepares to end him for good. Unagi screams that his power is spiraling out of control, but the principal declares he'll handle this little emergency himself. He unleashes a devastating attack, a flash of pure energy, vowing to cut the boy down before the dragon spirit is released. He puts all of his S-rank might into a single decisive strike. The entire training facility is engulfed in the blinding light of his power. Hyuga watches in awe, realizing Kurobohi Gui is at the center of that blast. The principal's face is a mask of grim determination. He's made his choice. The raw energy of the attack tears through the chamber. This is overkill on a whole new level. But instead of being obliterated, Kurobohi Gui floats peacefully in the eye of the storm. The Eva's power erupts, forming a spectral dragon around Kurobohi Gui. Nishiki is stunned by the sheer amount of element pouring from the boy. He decides to double down, preparing another, more powerful strike. A wave of pure energy cuts through the air towards its target. He unleashes a furious barrage, determined to overwhelm the boy's power. The S-ranker's blade glows with the intent to end this once and for all. His attack connects, a direct hit on the unconscious Kurobohi Gui. The principal's face is a mask of grim determination. His choice is made. Hyuga realizes with horror that the attack did nothing, and she needs to intervene. Her mind flashes back to his final, selfless act at the shelter door. She resolves to protect the boy who saved her life, but Kurobohi Gui's own power begins to react on its own. The tiny dragon spirit awakens within his palm, and it openly mocks the principal's failed attempts. The S-ranker's pride is clearly stung by the taunt. He accepts the challenge from the pint-sized powerhouse. The principal takes his distance, preparing for a real fight. He declares he's done holding back and will go all out. His blade gathers a terrifying amount of raw energy and unleashes a spectral beast of pure destructive force. A swirling vortex of golden energy fills the entire chamber, but the dragon spirit seems more amused than threatened by the display. Unagi realizes he's gathering all the element in the room for one attack. Two colossal forces of nature prepare to collide in the training hall. Hyuga desperately tries to reach him, reminding him of his own words. But Kurobohi Gui is lost, a vessel for the dragon's untamed rage. With a single gesture, he unleashes the spectral beast upon the principal. The dragon roars with glee. Apparently fun means city-leveling destruction. The principal meets the charge head-on, straining against the immense power. And the two attacks meet in a cataclysmic explosion of energy. The force of the impact sends the two girls flying across the room. The principal's blade glows, a single point of light in the chaos. But Nishiki Ryogen holds his ground, pushing back against the beast. He strains against the overwhelming force, his resolve unbroken. The spectral dragon roars, unleashing another wave of raw power. The spirit taunts him one last time, preparing to end the fight for good. Hyuga and Unagi can only scream his name, fearing the worst. The chamber is filled with smoke and the dust of destruction. But through the haze, the S-ranker emerges, looking mildly annoyed at best. The dragon spirit suddenly falters, questioning the encroaching darkness. But the spectral dragon's assault suddenly comes to a halt. At the center of the storm, Kurobohi Gui is finally waking up. The principal watches, sensing a dramatic shift in the overwhelming power. He asks who he's facing now, the monster or the boy. A familiar, defiant smile gives him his answer. Kurobohi Gui declares he's back in control of his own body. Nishiki Ryogen can only stare as the boy tames the beast within. Our boy then turns to have a little chat with his inner dragon. He scolds the tiny spirit for its little city-leveling tantrum, and threatens to eat it again if it doesn't start behaving. The dragon spirit stares into the eyes of the boy who devoured it. And suddenly, the world's strongest creature is just a terrified squeak toy. It relives the absolute horror of being torn apart from the inside. The spirit immediately surrenders, begging to be put back in its cage. With a whimper, the pint-sized apocalypse retreats back into his palm. Kurobohi Gui breathes a sigh of relief, glad the crisis averted itself. Unagi's final analysis confirms his element is back to 0. He's unranked once more. But the principal's reaction is not what anyone expected. He erupts in thunderous laughter, declaring the entire spectacle splendid. He marvels at how Kurobohi tamed the beast without harming a single soul. With a booming voice, the principal declares that Kurobohi Gui has passed. Our boy is understandably confused by the sudden job promotion. Nishiki explains that to fight monsters, humanity needs a monster of its own. But that power must be controlled, and the test was to see if he could tame it. Kurobohi realizes his entire day has been one big, life-threatening final exam. The idea of him, the powerless janitor, enrolling in an elite academy, he asks if this is just another test, another hoop to jump through, but after a moment of thought, his resolve hardens into a fist. He declares he'll do what he's always done, whatever he can. Whether he's a janitor or a hero, his promise to help remains the same. The principal smiles, officially welcoming Kurobohi Gui to the academy. He then offers to heal the wound he just inflicted, a very casual apology. But as he inspects the damage, he notices something impossible. The fatal wound is already closing, healing at an incredible rate. He realizes this is the regenerative power of the Ava's flesh. He then assigns Kurobohi to Hyuga's class, making her his new minder. The S-rank prodigy is flustered, but accepts her new responsibility. Unagi Senri is also assigned to the class. Her mission: constant surveillance. An assignment she accepts with a slightly terrifying amount of enthusiasm. Even the pint-sized Apocalypse is terrified of his new classmate. The principal watches his new students, sensing things are about to get interesting. He casually pulls out a thermos, preparing for a serious discussion. He offers Hyuga some tea, ever the prepared and slightly eccentric S-ranker. After a quick sip, he gets down to business with a very serious order. He gives her a grim directive. If Kurobohi loses control, she must kill him. The S-rank prodigy is stunned by the weight of her new mission. He explains that with him off and away, she is the last line of defense. She recalls her ultimate defense being shattered, doubting her own strength. The principal acknowledges her previous failure against the very same monster, but he insists her true alpha ability is more than enough to stop the boy. He calls her out, suggesting she could have stopped the Eva if she truly wanted to. The accusation hits hard, leaving the S-rank prodigy unable to defend herself. He reminds her that as one of only 10 S-rankers, protecting the country is a duty, not a choice. Her gaze falls on Kurobohi Gui, who is happily chatting with his new minder. He's completely oblivious to the grim conversation, still sporting a recently healed fatal wound. Her mind flashes back to the powerless boy who carried her to safety. With a new sense of resolve, she finally accepts her heavy burden. She vows that if Kurobohi ever loses control, she will be the one to end him. It's not just her duty, but her way of repaying the boy who saved her life. The principal gives a small, satisfied smile, accepting her solemn promise. The principal gets Kurobohi's attention, ready to continue the world's weirdest job interview. He summons a ball of pure energy, asking if Kurobohi can sense its power. But our boy feels absolutely nothing, confirming he's still completely unranked. With that settled, the principal announces their first official mission. Their task is simple: teach Kurobohi the basics of star elements. He frames this tutoring session as a mission critical to humanity's survival. No pressure. The next day, Kurobohi Gui heads out for his first lesson. He arrives at the special training ground, his pet Apocalypse in hand. He followed Hyuga's instructions to the letter, ready for anything. Except anything apparently means a luxury hot springs resort. He questions the logic of a hot springs resort being a training facility. He frantically checks his map, convinced he's in the wrong place. But a voice from above apologizes for the wait, confirming he's right on time. Kurobohi Gui looks up, his confusion growing by the second. Hyuga and Unagi welcome him to the official training facility. He asks about the special training, wondering if they've already finished. Hyuga insists this is all part of the mission, despite looking suspiciously relaxed. But then, a different thought crosses Kurobohi Gui's mind. He asks about Unagi's leg, noticing she's standing without her wheelchair. She happily explains the principal healed her fracture with his own alpha ability. Kurobohi is inspired, eager to master his own alpha ability. Unagi wastes no time, grabbing his wrist to begin her investigation. She gets a little too close for comfort, terrifying the pint-sized Apocalypse. The dragon spirit dives back into the safety of the black hole, but Unagi's interest shifts to the hole itself. With a very unsettling smile, she closes in, telling him to hold still for a personal examination. And with a cheerful announcement, she prepares to probe his power. Her expression is one of pure, unadulterated scientific curiosity, or something. As her fingers enter the void, Kurobohi yells that it's incredibly ticklish. She then invites Hyuga to try, as Kurobohi begs her to stop. Hyuga is uncharacteristically flustered as Kurobohi demands they stop. Her finger finds the tiny dragon spirit, which is not happy about the intrusion. The dragon spirit throws a tantrum, much to Unagi's amusement. With a smug look, Unagi declares her hypothesis has been confirmed. She asks for his feedback, but all he felt was a tickling sensation. Her cheerful demeanor vanishes as she delivers some very bad news. Kurobohi is shocked by the news, though his inner dragon seems thrilled by the incompetence. She explains she was releasing star elements, and his inability to feel them is a huge problem. Our boy admits he has no idea what star elements even are. Hyuga explains they're the fuel required to use any alpha ability. She explains that star elements are the cosmic matter the Evas brought with them. This energy source is now spread across the entire planet. It exists within all living things, a fundamental part of the new world. Humans absorb it through breathing and eating, constantly radiating a faint aura. But the problem is that Kurobo Higui can't sense this fuel, so he can't use his power. He finally grasps the situation, even if his inner dragon finds his incompetence amusing. But his optimism quickly returns. He has faith in his new trainers. The two girls share a knowing smile, ready for the challenge. Unagi announces their training to sense star elements will begin right here. She then hands a ladle to Hyuga, telling her to start the first lesson. With a serious expression, Hyuga prepares a ladle of hot spring water. She then infuses it with a massive amount of her own elemental energy. Kurobo Higui is baffled as Unagi marvels at the concentrated power. Hyuga explains that drinking this should awaken his ability to sense star elements. Unagi's suggestive phrasing makes the whole exchange incredibly awkward. She clarifies they've simply supercharged the spring's naturally high energy. Full of confidence, Kurobohi takes the ladle, ready for his first real lesson. But his trainer's unsettling smiles suggest this might be a very bad idea. He takes a sip, and his body immediately rejects whatever that was. The ladle clatters to the ground as he recoils in absolute disgust. He clutches his throat, screaming as a burning sensation rips through him. Unagi Senri offers a casual and slightly terrifying addendum to her instructions. Apparently, concentrated star elements can be poisonous. A minor detail, really. Kurobohi argues that this was, in fact, a very major detail. She explains this is a standard, if brutal, rite of passage for all new students. He admits he was completely blindsided by this trial by poison water, but his resolve is unshaken. He'll endure this for the chance to finally help others. His unwavering determination earns a rare moment of approval from his trainers. He pushes through the agony, his body struggling to adapt to the power. And just like that, his system overloads in a blinding flash of raw energy. He grits his teeth, pushing through the searing pain. But instead of poison, he feels a strange power flowing through him. He questions the impossible sensation, a dawning realization on his face. For the first time, he can see the energy he was told about. He finally understands what it feels like to have power. His trainers cheer him on, confirming his success. But just as he celebrates, something catches his attention. He looks up, sensing a sudden change in the air around him. He realizes the entire area is suddenly flooded with star elements. He can sense it in the water, the trees, and the very air he breathes. The energy radiates from the trees, the water, and the very ground. Unagi explains, this is why the resort is a special training ground. But just as he senses it, the energy vanishes into thin air. Kurobohi Gui is left wondering where it all suddenly went. But Unagi seems to have expected this all along. She explains his own black hole ability is consuming the energy. The horrifying implication of her words begins to dawn on him. She cheerfully confirms his body is a leaky bucket for cosmic power. He realizes this means he might be powerless all over again. His trainers can only look on as he grapples with this cruel twist of fate. But Hyuga suddenly has a brilliant idea, much to Kurobohi's confusion. Her grand plan is for them all to get in the hot spring for some full-body immersion training. Unagi is immediately on board with this highly professional training exercise. Kurobohi Gui panics, trying to remind them this was supposed to be a serious lesson. They brush off his concerns, insisting that this is all part of the plan. Our boy can't believe this is happening. Even his pet dragon seems to be mocking him. Now soaking in the spring, he suspects his trainer's motives might be less than pure. Meanwhile, the pint-sized apocalypse is having the time of its life, literally drinking the energy. The dragon spirit gloats about how tough it must be for the untalented, rubbing salt in the wound. It then laughs in his face, reminding him he's still completely powerless. With a swift bonk, he puts the tiny dragon back in its place. He scolds the spirit for interrupting his moment of existential dread. But he admits the dragon's taunts hold a bitter truth. Surrounded by energy, he can't grasp a single drop of it. His inner apocalypse, however, continues to enjoy its spa day. But then, a familiar spark of defiance cuts through the despair. He declares that his greatest strength has always been his stubborn refusal to quit. Meanwhile, in the women's bath, the training continues at a leisurely pace. Hyuga Orin lets out a sigh, a rare moment of peace for the S-rank prodigy. But Unagi ponders their dilemma. Sensing power is useless if he can't wield it. Hyuga explains that alpha abilities are tied to personal perception. Unagi agrees, saying her methods would only confuse him. So they decide to have faith and wait for him to figure it out on his own. Meanwhile, Kurobohi's drink the poison strategy has officially failed. He's getting dizzy, admitting he's not a fan of hot water to begin with. The struggle is written all over his exhausted face. He suddenly notices the energy he could just sense is disappearing. In a panic, he realizes the star elements are vanishing around him. His own apex predator ability is absorbing all the power. He stares at his palm, unable to control the very power he needs. But then, a system message appears, announcing a critical threshold has been met. Kurobohi Gui stares in disbelief at the familiar glowing window. The energy his body absorbed wasn't just disappearing, it was being stored. The system offers him a new ability, Star Element Jet. Confused but desperate, he accepts the unknown power-up. On the other side of the resort, a sudden tremor shakes the ground. Hyuga and Unagi are jolted from their relaxation by the violent shockwave. A colossal pillar of golden energy erupts from the men's bath. So much for a quiet spa day. Realizing the source of the chaos, they sprint towards the disturbance. Hyuga screams his name, fearing the worst has happened. Hyuga finds him standing in the steam, completely unharmed. He apologizes for the commotion, looking a little embarrassed. He explains a system window appeared, letting him use his power. Our boy gives an awkward laugh as if this happens all the time. His trainers are left speechless, demanding an explanation. The next morning, Kurobohi Gui prepares for a new beginning. He's no longer the janitor, but an official resident student. He prepares for the first day of the rest of his life. He walks with newfound confidence, his pet Apocalypse in tow. But a familiar voice greets him on his way to class. Hyuga and Unagi are there to greet him, complimenting his new look. Unagi immediately makes things weird, as is her custom. Even his inner Apocalypse finds his embarrassment absolutely hilarious. But then Unagi gets serious, asking if he can control that new power. A flashback reveals his attempt to use it was less than successful. The pint-sized dragon became the unfortunate target of his wild power, and it is still very, very salty about the whole experience. He admits he can't control it, much to Unagi's scientific curiosity. He theorizes he needs to store a certain amount of energy first. Hyuga confirms his black hole absorbed energy from the entire resort. Hyuga complains that his little power vacuum ruined their own training. Kurobohi Gui offers a frantic apology, which she quickly dismisses as a joke. He's surprised to learn the Ice Wall Witch even has a sense of humor. But she gets serious, saying what matters is that he can finally use his power. Together, they resolve to grow stronger as students of the academy. Kurobohi Gui accepts their camaraderie with a determined smile. He then gives a formal bow, thanking them for the opportunity to learn. The S-rank prodigy is completely flustered by his sudden sincerity. He explains he just wants to start his new life the right way. With a proud smile, Hyuga declares he's already a true student. But he suddenly waves them off, saying he has a quick stop to make. Hyuga calls out in a panic, worried he'll be late for his first day. He just shouts back that he'll make it, sprinting off with purpose. As Hyuga frets, Unagi simply smiles, finding his earnestness charming. His destination, however, is not the academy, but the 8th City Hospital. He sits at the bedside of his mother, who remains unconscious. He apologizes for not visiting, explaining that a lot has happened. She lies still, a silent figure in the quiet hospital room. He stands proudly, showing off his new uniform and announcing his admission. And he renews his promise to use his new power to help everyone, just like she taught him. He takes one last look at the woman who gave him his conviction. With a smile, he promises to visit again soon, his new life waiting. And with a final farewell, he steps out to face his first day. The door clicks shut, leaving the room in a heavy, somber silence. His inner dragon senses a strange energy, but decides it's not his problem. But a much more immediate problem suddenly dawns on Kurobohi Gui. He sprints through the streets, realizing the school moved and he's incredibly late. He spots the academy in the distance, a finish line in his race against the clock. But his mad dash is brought to a sudden painful stop by an unseen obstacle. He quickly apologizes for bumping into another student, a great start to his first day. The student he ran into is a familiar and not particularly friendly face. It's the A-rank bully, Hiwashi, who immediately questions why the useless janitor is in uniform. Kurobohi Gui is taken aback by the sudden hostile reunion. He recognizes the voice and asks about the bandages, a genuine look of concern on his face. But Hiwashi takes the question as a deep insult to his pride. He grabs Kurobohi by the collar, screaming that he doesn't need pity from the likes of him. But Kurobohi calmly explains he was grateful Hiwashi stood up to the monster for everyone. The words seem to strike a nerve, forcing the arrogant bully to pause. He's thrown back into the memory of his own humiliating failure against the Eva. The shame of that defeat is still fresh, a wound deeper than any physical injury. Kurobohi Gui extends a hand, offering an unexpected olive branch. He introduces himself as a new student, hoping they can be comrades. But his offer of peace is violently slapped away. Hiwashi explodes in a torrent of flame, taking the gesture as pure mockery. He screams that he'll burn the former janitor, uniform and all. Kurobohi Gui is stunned by the sheer unprovoked aggression. But that surprise quickly hardens into a familiar defiant glare. A crowd gathers because nothing says welcome to school like a public beatdown. But a familiar voice cuts through the noise as Hyuga Orion arrives on the scene. She moves to intervene just as Hiwashi unleashes his fiery assault. But Kurobo Higui stands his ground, refusing to back down. Hyuga panics, wondering why he's picking a fight on his very first day. But before she can intervene, a hand suddenly clamps over her mouth. Yonagi Senri holds her back with a mischievous, knowing smile. She suggests they just watch for a bit, finding the whole situation rather interesting. Yonagi calmly notes that Hiwashi is an A-ranker with actual combat experience. She argues that if Kurobohi wants to survive here, he needs to prove his strength. Hyuga can only watch with growing concern, her faith in him being tested. Hiwashi unleashes a massive sphere of pure, concentrated flame. The attack screams towards Kurobo Higui, who braces for the inevitable impact. Hiwashi unleashes a furious barrage, mocking Kurobohi for dodging. But our boy is surprisingly nimble, weaving through the storm of flames. He panics, realizing his new jet ability isn't responding. His inner dragon, however, is a terrible cheerleader. Desperate for a solution, his eyes fall to the mark on his palm. And in that tiny galaxy, a new, dangerous idea begins to form. Hiwashi grows frustrated, preparing a much larger attack. He unleashes his ultimate attack, a massive beam of pure fire, but instead of running, Kurobo Higui stands his ground. With a roar, he thrusts his hand forward, aiming the black hole at the blast. The tiny dragon watches as the void begins to devour the inferno. The black hole strains, pulling the inferno into its tiny event horizon, but the sheer volume of energy is far too much to contain. The resulting blast sends Kurobo Higui flying backwards through the air. He crashes to the ground, his uniform scorched from the impact. Hyuga and Yonagi can only watch in horror, screaming his name. The crowd erupts in cheers, mocking the fallen janitor. He questions why his power failed, the flames getting through his defense. His inner dragon throws a tantrum, while Kurobohi explains his flawed logic. He realizes his mistake. The flames are just a product of star elements, not the raw energy itself. And that's a very bad lesson to learn against an A-ranker with unlimited ammo. The dragon spirit offers its power, a tempting deal from the devil on his shoulder. It paints a grim picture of destruction, urging him to embrace the chaos. From above, Hiwashi mocks his resilience, calling him a stubborn pest. The A-ranker is genuinely surprised the former janitor is still conscious. But Kurobo Higui's glare is one of pure, unyielding defiance. Hiwashi decides to end it, preparing a final, overwhelming blast of fire. But a strange, manic grin spreads across Kurobohi's face. Instead of being incinerated, he catches the fireball with his bare hand. He roars that a real fight is a battle of wills, not just power. Locked in a fiery stalemate, he refuses to be burned, pushing back with everything he has. He screams into the inferno, his will refusing to be incinerated. And his black hole ability responds, devouring the flames at their source. Hiwashi stares at his hand, the inferno suddenly extinguished. Kurobo Higui holds him fast, the power dynamic shifting in an instant. The bully demands to know why his power has suddenly vanished. A system window appears, confirming he's absorbed enough energy for one attack. But he remembers the hot springs, realizing that power is far too destructive. Hiwashi clutches his chest, feeling his own energy reserves suddenly depleted. Enraged and confused, he demands to know what Kurobohi did to him. He throws a desperate punch, but without his power, it's easily caught. Kurobohi Gui grins, ready to unleash his stored power. The black hole inverts, becoming a blinding sphere of golden light. He shoves the condensed energy right into Hiwashi's chest and unleashes the full force of the star element jet point blank. A pillar of pure energy sends the A-ranker soaring into the sky. Hiwashi is launched into orbit, his first day of school officially ruined. The crowd below can only stare as the light show finally fades. The bully lies unconscious, defeated by the janitor he once mocked. From the sidelines, Yonagi cheers while Hyuga breathes a sigh of relief. The other students are in disbelief, wondering who just took down an A-rank elite. Kurobo Higui is still reeling from the fight, his pet dragon equally stunned by the chaos. He collapses on the curb, questioning how his own power could activate without his command. But there's no time to rest. His first day at the academy is just beginning. Inside Year 1, Class 1, the teacher announces the arrival of a new transfer student. Kurobo Higui is shoved in front of the class, looking like he's about to face another dragon. The students immediately recognize him as the guy who took down Hiwashi that morning. He nervously introduces himself to his new and slightly intimidated classmates. With a deep bow, he offers a frantic apology for being late on his very first day. The teacher explains his tardiness is punishment for the fight, a warning to the rest of the class. Yonagi is thoroughly entertained by the spectacle, while Hyuga just looks mortified. Yonagi cheerfully greets him, mocking his rather eventful first day. He explains that his punishment was actually a summons to the principal's office, where he received a very long, very stern lecture for his actions. Unagi declares that for fighting on his first day, he got off incredibly easy. Hyuga is less amused, reminding him he could have been expelled. She declares herself his minder and threatens to freeze him solid if he steps out of line again. The chilling threat is more than enough to get an immediate, terrified apology, but Unagi changes the subject, gushing over how impressive his fight was. She excitedly explains her new theory. His alpha ability has two distinct parts. The first is the black hole in his right hand, which absorbs star elements on contact. The second is Jet, which releases all that stored energy in a single, devastating blast. She explains that even real black holes eject matter, a cosmic parallel to his newfound power. But Kurobohi admits he can't use it at will, much to his inner dragon's smug satisfaction. Just then, a nervous new voice cuts into their strategy session. A B-rank student approaches, asking if Kurobohi is the one who used to clean the old building. Kurobohi is stunned to be recognized, wondering how this student could possibly know him. The boy explains he was always amazed by his dedication, remembering how spotless he left everything. Our boy is completely flustered, not used to receiving praise for his janitorial skills. He gives a heartfelt thanks, genuinely moved that someone noticed his hard work. The new student continues his nervous tick, seemingly a big fan of the former janitor. The B-rank student introduces himself as Kani Abuku, offering a hand in friendship. Kurobohi Gui happily accepts, admitting he's unranked. His pet dragon, however, is not impressed. Kani is stunned by this, but quickly gushes that his power must be incredible. But their friendly introduction is violently interrupted from behind. Hiwashi, the recently defeated A-ranker, sneers at the sight of them together. He questions when the academy started accepting such low-level trash. But Kurobohi Gui cuts him off with a single unimpressed word: lame. Enraged, Hiwashi unleashes a blast of green energy without a second thought. The attack slams into Kurobohi Gui, sending him flying across the classroom, and he's sent crashing straight through the window. His first day getting even worse. Connie stares in disbelief as Hiwashi lies defeated in the wreckage. But a new S-rank student appears, mocking Hiwashi for his pathetic display. He calls the A-rank elite a weakling, his contempt clear as day. Outside, the shattered glass is a testament to the sudden violence. The S-ranker steps through the broken window, listing Hiwashi's failures. He adds the morning's fight to the A-ranker's list of transgressions, and for his weakness, he rips the A-rank insignia from his uniform. Hiwashi can only stare, recognizing the second-year S-ranker. This is Ida Raisin, and he's here to clean house. He punctuates his judgment with a brutal kick to the chest. He explains his presence is a direct result of the first year's weakness. He sighs, clearly annoyed that the principal has assigned him to babysit. He recounts how Hiwashi's arrogance led the class to be wiped out by the Eva. With such weaklings, he declares, humanity has no future. Kurobohi Gui and his new friend can only watch in stunned silence. With a menacing grin, he announces a surprise selection exam for all first years. The announcement sends a wave of pure shock through the entire class. Their test is simple: hunt and kill 5 A-class EVAs per person. You know, a light afternoon. The penalty for failure is having their rank stripped and being expelled. The students panic, realizing they're being sent to fight monsters far above their rank. Ida Raisin dismisses their panic, calling their weakness the reason they're all so lame. His attention then snaps to Kurobohi Gui, recognizing him from a previous punishment. He points, declaring that despite the principal's approval, he refuses to acknowledge him. He reveals he knows Kurobohi was at the Eva site, calling him suspicious. And with that, the first years are sent on a long run to the exam site. Kurobohi Gui is already exhausted, his morning run turning into an all-day marathon. But a familiar voice offers some encouragement as Unagi Senri easily keeps pace. She cheerfully informs him they've been running for 3 hours straight. So much for a warm-up. As they finally approach their destination, Kurobohi notices something is wrong. The exam site is a ghost town, completely abandoned and falling apart. Hyuga explains they've run outside the city's defense perimeter. Humanity has abandoned most of the world to the ever-advancing EVAs. With EVAs everywhere, each city is now an isolated fortress. Unagi cheerfully confirms that humanity's counterattack is just propaganda. Their S-rank proctor, Ida Raisin, screams at them to stop lagging behind. He announces the exam site is in view, demanding a final, desperate sprint. The exhausted students can only obey, their futures on the line. But Ida Raisin's attention is focused on one particular student. He points directly at Kurobohi Gui, outing him as the boy from the EVA site. Kurobohi realizes his secret is in danger, and with it, his very life. He spots his new minders up ahead, pushing himself to keep up. After hours of running, even his trained stamina is reaching its limit. They finally arrive at the exam site, which is just a forest. He begs for a moment to catch his breath, completely exhausted. Hyuga is genuinely impressed he could keep pace with the elite students. He explains that without powers, he focused on stamina, and it paid off. The S-rank prodigy is surprisingly moved by his simple dedication, but their proctor has no time for breaks, demanding they gather for instructions. Ida Raisin confirms their impossible task: hunt 5 A-class EVAs per person, and if they fail, their academic careers are officially over. No pressure. The students can only stare in disbelief at the impossible task. One brave soul speaks up, arguing A-class EVAs are far beyond their B-rank abilities. Ida Raisin's response is a single, contemptuous word: lame. In a flash of green light, he moves with impossible speed. The protesting student can only stare, a sudden draft on his shoulder. Ida Raisin shatters the boy's rank badge, expelling him on the spot. The others watch in horror, unable to even track the S-ranker's movements. He lectures them on the harsh reality of the battlefield. Kurobohi Gui listens intently, while his inner dragon preens at the mention of its power. His final lesson is simple: overcome your limits or die trying. The S-ranker's brutal lesson leaves the remaining students terrified. But his words light a fire, their pride as elite students reignited. With a roar of determination, they charge headfirst into the forest. Kurobohi Gui follows, vowing to do whatever he can to pass. Hyuga and Unagi watch them go, wondering how many will survive. Hyuga explains the grim math. A-class EVAs are tanks, and B-rankers are just infantry. Unagi calls it an impossible game, but Hyuga resolves to support them from afar. But their proctor has other plans, announcing a special exam just for them, an assignment they are clearly not thrilled to receive. Meanwhile, Kurobohi Gui sprints into the forest, but his enthusiasm is about to meet a harsh reality. He realizes the first problem with his impossible task. He has no idea where to find his targets. His inner dragon, however, is thrilled by the prospect of a hunt, offering to take over for a bit. An offer that Kurobohi Gui immediately and silently rejects. A flashback reveals the principal found his first day brawl rather amusing, but he warned that admiration alone wouldn't be enough to keep him safe. He gives a grim order: if other S-rankers learn his secret, they will try to eliminate him. Kurobohi realizes he's surrounded by people who could kill him at any moment. Fun times at the academy. Back in the present, he firmly rejects the dragon's help, determined to pass this test on his own. The pint-sized apocalypse is absolutely heartbroken by the sudden rejection, but it quickly recovers, offering its full support from a safe, non-possessive distance. The dragon continues its helpful feedback, calling him suspicious and a few other choice words. But his internal debate is cut short by a sudden tremor and a distant scream. He finds the source, a colossal one-eyed beast towering over a fallen student. He recognizes his new friend Kaney, helpless before a real, live EVA. The monster's eye glows with a terrifying red light, its power immense. Kaney can only scream, paralyzed by the sheer terror of the beast. Kurobohi Gui is stunned by its sheer scale, far larger than he imagined. He realizes with a jolt that this must be one of the A-class EVAs. The beast raises a massive limb, preparing to crush Kaney like an insect. Its attack slams down with incredible force, and Kaney can only scream. But the crushing blow never lands, stopped by a shimmering, transparent barrier. Kurobohi realizes his new friend's power is a defensive bubble, though it seems to be fueled by pure terror. Without a second thought, he sprints forward, vowing to save his classmate. But he quickly realizes his energy reserves are completely empty. The star element jet is offline. With no offensive power, he resorts to the one trick he knows will work. His plan is simple: get close and absorb the monster's own energy with his black hole. He slaps his hand onto the beast's leg, initiating the cosmic vacuum cleaner. The one-eyed boar turns, its gaze locking onto the tiny pest draining its power. And with a casual swat, it sends Kurobohi Gui flying like a ragdoll. He crashes hard into the ground, his brilliant plan lasting all of 3 seconds. He screams in agony, the force of the blow rattling his entire body. He slumps against a tree, dazed and momentarily defeated. Kaney watches in horror, blaming himself for his new friend's sacrifice. Kurobohi realizes his new EVA-infused body is the only reason he's not already dead. His inner dragon appears, offering some very unhelpful performance feedback. But Kurobohi Gui tells the strongest species exactly where it can stick its advice. Grabbing a makeshift weapon, he vows to defeat the monster on his own terms. The spirit seems to relent, but with a sinister promise to take over if he passes out. As the beast charges, he tells his inner apocalypse to just watch from the sidelines. He admits he has no plan to defeat it, but that was never his intention. He declares he'll do what he's always done, whatever he can. With a roar, he unleashes the star element jet. The blast of energy screams towards the colossal EVA. He realizes the gamble paid off. His brief touch absorbed just enough power. The attack connects, a direct hit right in the monster's eye. But the A-class EVA emerges without a single scratch. So much for that plan. He's now completely out of power, a one-shot wonder with a very angry target. But just as the beast prepares to strike, the air fills with strange, shimmering bubbles. Kurobohi Gui is just as confused as the monster, wondering where they came from. The bubbles gently land on the Eva, which seems more curious than concerned. The bubbles pop, releasing a strange energy that seems to disorient the beast. Enraged, the Eva lets out a furious roar and charges forward. But its attack slams into a tree, missing its target completely. Kani screams for Kurobohi Gui, telling him this is their chance to escape. Kurobohi realizes Kani's bubbles aren't an attack, but a distraction. He doesn't hesitate, sprinting towards his friend to cover their retreat. Kani calls out his name, relieved to see him on his feet. Together, the two students make a desperate dash for safety. Kani is overcome with emotion, thanking him for the selfless rescue. As they run, Kurobohi asks if that was really an A-class monster. Kani confirms it was definitely an A-class Eva, though his tone lacks confidence. Kurobohi Gui gives credit where it's due, praising Kani's bubble ability for saving them. Kani downplays his power, admitting it has no offensive capability, and he was too scared to use it. He then notices one of the strange bubbles has stuck to his own uniform. He tries to pull it off, but the shimmering orb refuses to budge. As the bubble sticks to his fingers, Kani laments his own lack of talent for fighting. Kurobohi realizes the strange bubble isn't popping, but soaking into his clothes. Defeated, Kani announces his decision. He's going to drop out of the exam. But Kurobohi Gui sees not weakness, but an opportunity, a key to defeating the eyeball boar. Kani is completely baffled by his sudden optimism, asking if he was even listening. The two boys catch their breath, having finally outrun the monster. They share a look of pure terror, still reeling from their near-death experience. But Kurobohi Gui cuts through the relief, questioning Kani's decision to quit. Kani confirms it, his voice full of resignation as he admits he has no talent. Kurobohi is baffled, arguing that getting into this elite school is proof enough of his worth. To explain, Kani prepares to demonstrate his so-called useless alpha ability. His power is creating sticky bubbles, not exactly a city-leveling superpower. He explains that in a school that values raw destruction, his ability is worthless. A painful memory reveals he's been mocked his entire life for his weak power. But while Kani wallows in self-pity, Kurobohi is on the ground, examining the bubbles with intense curiosity. But Kurobohi Gui explains that these bubbles are actually incredible. He's discovered their true nature. They don't just stick, they solidify whatever they touch. With a brilliant smile, he declares, "This power is perfect for hunting Evas." But Kani begs him to stop, crushed by a lifetime of failure and ridicule. He asks how Kurobohi can be so cheerful when his own power just failed spectacularly. Kurobohi's smile softens, admitting that Kani has a point. He then shares his mother's wisdom. A person's worth is defined by their actions, not their abilities. With renewed fire, he declares they'll defeat the monster together because he has a plan. All he needs is for Kani to lend him his so-called useless power. Kani can only stare, completely stunned by this sudden, impossible offer of teamwork. Back in the forest, the two boys track down their target. Kurobohi Gui notes that the effects of the bubbles have worn off, but he's got a new plan, and it starts with a single, ordinary rock. With a determined shout, he puts his brilliant strategy into motion. The rock connects, a direct hit right on the monster's rear flank. The Eva turns, more confused than hurt by the sudden pebble assault. Kurobohi stands his ground, taunting the beast to draw its attention. The plan works a little too well as the Eva charges with a furious roar. He turns and sprints, leading the monster exactly where he wants it to go. The A-class beast thunders after him, closing the distance with terrifying speed. But Kani is frozen in place, convinced he'll only be a hindrance. Kurobohi Gui just shouts back that it's fine, he'll do what he can. With a roar, he continues the chase, leading the monster away. But the Eva is far faster, its tusk catching him in a brutal blow. He's sent flying. A scream of pure agony torn from his lips. He crashes hard to the ground as the beast thunders past. Pushing through the pain, he forces himself to keep running. But the monster is gaining on him, its shadow swallowing him whole. Just as it's about to strike, the air fills with a familiar, shimmering sight. Kani's bubbles swarm the beast's legs, a last-ditch effort from his terrified friend. The bubbles pop, solidifying into a sticky trap around the monster's legs. The A-class Eva's charge is brought to a sudden, frustrating crawl. Kurobohi Gui sees the plan working, shouting his approval as he continues to run. Kani pushes past his fear, unleashing a torrent of his once mocked ability. He admits he can't keep up, but vows to do whatever he can to support his friend. Inspired by Kurobohi's unwavering faith, he finds a new resolve. Kurobohi sees the monster is finally slowed, realizing their window of opportunity is open. He sprints towards a pre-placed marker, the next phase of their brilliant last-minute plan. He shouts as he reaches the designated spot, their trap now perfectly set. And just as the Eva reaches the marker, a hidden trap is sprung with a blinding flash. Kurobo Higui leaps into the air, narrowly avoiding the Eva's furious charge. The monster roars in confusion, its momentum carrying it forward. But the ground beneath it suddenly gives way, revealing their hidden trap. The A-class beast plummets, its rage lost in the sudden jarring fall. Kurobohi celebrates as the monster lands squarely in their makeshift pitfall. But he's not done yet, leaping down into the pit after his prey. He lands directly on the monster's head, a perfect 10 for the dismount. He explains the pit is filled with Kaney's useless bubbles, now a perfect cage. He declares that with the right strategy, any power can be a weapon. And with that, he unleashes his black hole, ready to drain the beast dry. The system confirms he's absorbed enough energy for a single attack. Without a moment's hesitation, he accepts the power-up. He unleashes the full force of the star element jet point blank. The blast obliterates the monster, leaving him standing on its remains. He erupts in a cheer, celebrating their hard-earned victory. But his celebration is cut short by a strange golden light from the corpse. The light intensifies, erupting in a blinding flash. The resulting explosion sends him flying backwards through the air. Apparently, Evas have a self-destruct feature. He crashes to the ground, his inner dragon offering zero sympathy. And where the monster once lay, a single glowing gem now floats. Kurobo Higui stares at the strange eye-like jewel left in the monster's wake. Kaney scrambles down into the pit, calling out to make sure his friend is all right. Our boy brushes himself off, complaining more about his bruised pride than the actual fall. But Kaney's attention is fixed on the glowing stone, a look of dawning realization on his face. He identifies it as an element stone, the crystallized core of a defeated Eva. He explains that each stone holds the unique properties of the monster it came from. Kurobohi finally understands, realizing he missed this little detail after his first kill. Kaney confirms these stones are concentrated power, and therefore incredibly valuable. They can be used to refuel abilities, forge weapons, or just make you ridiculously rich. But his inner dragon sees only a key to its freedom and asks to hold the stone. For purely innocent reasons, of course. The dragon spirit promises it's a great idea with a grin that screams terrible idea, an offer that Kurobo Higui immediately rejects with a swift bonk. He tells the spirit he's not falling for its suspicious-looking face. Kaney asks if he's okay, forcing Kurobohi to play off his one-sided argument as talking to himself. He quickly changes the subject, giving Kaney full credit for their victory. Kaney is overcome with emotion, thanking him for believing in him. With their confidence restored, they resolve to hunt the remaining 9 monsters together. Elsewhere in the forest, Ida Rasen stands over 2 defeated students. He scoffs at their weakness, questioning how they even achieved their ranks. His victims are none other than Hyuga and Unagi, their special exam apparently not going well. He questions how they can ever win a real fight with this level of training. His focus turns to Hyuga, demanding to know what she's even fighting for. He calls her out for her lack of killing intent, a fatal flaw in their world. Her mind flashes back to the principal's grim order to kill Kurobohi if needed. Ida Racen warns that with her current resolve, she's as good as dead. The S-rank prodigy can only kneel in silence, unable to answer his challenge. He then turns his attention to Unagi, telling her to stop playing the fool. He reveals he knows she's been hiding her true alpha ability all along, but Unagi just smiles, cheerfully admitting that he's figured her out. The revelation leaves Hyuga completely stunned, her proctor looking smug. Ida Racen delivers a final, chilling warning to the defeated girls. As night falls, he declares that the time for the exam is finally over. With a single step, he moves to gather the survivors. A small group of students presents their collected element stones. They are the few who managed to survive the impossible test. Out of 30 students, only 6 have returned. A pretty high failure rate, even for this school. He begins the final inspection, but a voice cuts through the silence. Kurobo Higui and Kani arrive just in the nick of time. Our boy reaches into his pocket, ready to present their results. He proudly displays 10 stones, asking if their combined effort is enough to pass. Ida Racen stares down the 2 latecomers, his expression unreadable. He questions their method, noting they worked together to meet the quota. Kurobohi argues they followed the rules, using their heads and abilities as instructed. The S-ranker scoffs but reluctantly accepts their logic. He announces that the 8 of them have passed while the rest are officially expelled. His final judgment is cold. Failure here means death on the battlefield. The grim reality of their world settles heavily on Kurobo Higui. He then reminds them of their recent failure against the strongest species. The words hit Hyuga hard, a painful reminder of her own powerlessness. He reveals the exam's true purpose, to teach them the value of teamwork. Ida Racen announces their next mission, a slight step up from their last one. The survivors are stunned by the news of an S-class Eva colony. Kurobohi Gui is understandably confused by the term colony. The S-ranker begins to explain the grim reality of their situation. The Evas are terraforming the planet, and civilian casualties are mounting. He reveals the exam was just a qualifier for this suicide mission. Hyuga and Unagi are also ordered to join, their duty as high rankers. Unagi's cheerful facade cracks, realizing they're probably all going to die. With that cheery news, he tells them to rest up before the big day. Kurobohi and Kani are just glad the others will be rescued, as Ida Raisin watches on. Ida Raisin is still suspicious, surprised the boy from the Eva site passed. He'll use whatever tools he can, but he's watching Kurobohi closely. And if the kid steps out of line, he'll eliminate him personally. The next morning, the survivors are bussed out to their next mission. The mood is somber as the exhausted students try to rest. Kurobohi Gui stares into the darkness, their destination looming in his mind. He looks around at his sleeping and blissfully unaware classmates. Even the stoic Hyuga Orion has succumbed to exhaustion. Unagi is also out cold, proving even psychic surveillance needs a nap. He can't shake the feeling that this mission is happening far too soon. He reflects on his past, a life defined by powerlessness and pain. But now, for the first time, he has friends to fight alongside. He knows the Eva Nest colony is a mission he might not return from. The principal's warning echoes in his mind. His secret is a death sentence. He can't risk using the dragon's power, not with Ida Raisin watching. His only weapon is the jet, but it needs fuel he doesn't have. But his mother's words cut through the doubt, a familiar source of strength. He thinks of his mother, and the thought of dying takes on a new weight. With a new resolve, he clenches his fist, ready to face what's coming. But a sudden, uncontrollable tremor runs through his body as a familiar voice mocks his fear. The dragon spirit emerges from his palm, its form shifting and growing. It boasts of its ancient origins, having fought Evas for eons. It lectures him that those who tremble before a battle are already lost. They always end up begging for their lives. A real confidence booster, this one. The spirit then prophesies that Kurobohi will soon be begging for its power. With a final taunt, it retreats back into his palm, eagerly awaiting his failure. Kurobohi Gui snaps back, trying to argue with the voice in his hand. But he clenches his fist, refusing to give in to the temptation or the fear. He tries to calm himself, the weight of the mission pressing down on him. On a bus full of sleeping soldiers, he is the only one awake to face his demons. The bus finally rolls to a stop, its journey at an end. Ida Raisin steps out, calling his students trash as they disembark. Unagi Senri follows, her usual cheerful demeanor slightly strained. Kani Ibuku clutches a handkerchief, his nerves clearly getting the better of him. The other survivors of the exam look on, their faces grim. A mix of A and B rankers, the last of the first-year elite. Their proctor leads them towards a dark, ominous cave entrance. He confirms their destination, the S-class Eva Nest colony. He explains the Evas have already sensed their presence. He then singles out Kani, demanding an immediate briefing on their target. Kani explains the colony is a recreation of the Eva's own hellish homeworld. Worse, the air is toxic to their powers, limiting them to a fraction of their strength. Ida Raisin confirms the grim news, adding his signature insult for good measure. He explains that conventional weapons are completely useless against these monsters. Their only hope lies in their alpha abilities, the very powers that are now weakened. But Kurobohi Gui's resolve doesn't waver, even in the face of impossible odds. The S-ranker then calls Unagi forward, her cheerful demeanor completely out of place. She stretches casually, admitting this mission is going to be a tough one. But her definition of tough seems to be synonymous with fun. She removes her eye patch, revealing a golden, glowing eye that begins to scan the area. She unleashes her celestial observation, her golden eye piercing the veil. Her vision plunges deep into the heart of the Eva Nest. She navigates the suffocating darkness of the alien labyrinth. With a thoughtful hum, she begins to map out the enemy's territory. She confirms the nest is a confusing maze, its energy signature thick and hard to read. And it's crawling with A-class Evas, which she casually nicknames bipedal ants. Kani explains her power isn't just sight, but a way to read the very flow of life and energy. As her focus sharpens, the layout of the entire colony becomes clear. And at the center of it all, she finds the S-class boss, the queen of this hive. But as she observes, a new monstrous presence makes itself known on the battlefield. She spots a strange humanoid Eva, unlike any she's seen before. It grabs one of the smaller ant Evas with brutal, overwhelming force, and brings the struggling creature towards its own body. She realizes with dawning horror that it's devouring its own kind, a monster that feeds on other monsters. Well, that's not terrifying at all. Suddenly, its glowing eyes lock onto her, sensing her psychic presence. She's violently thrown back into her own body, her observation shattered. Shaken, she turns to Ida Raisin to deliver her terrifying report. This isn't an S-class colony, but an S+ humanoid nest. She gives a grim assessment. If they proceed, they will all be killed. Kurobo Higui can only stare, the weight of their suicide mission finally sinking in. Unagi calmly recommends the only sane course of action, a full retreat. The other students panic at the mention of a humanoid Eva. Kurobohi is confused, believing S rank was the top of the food chain. Kanei questions how he even got into the academy and offers a quick lesson. He explains the ranking system, a simple pyramid of who gets to survive. The 10 S rankers are humanity's strongest, but even they have their limits. And S+ Evas, like the humanoid, are a threat far beyond that limit. These monsters are not just powerful, but intelligent, requiring 2 S rankers to defeat 1. Unagi adds that this one has been feasting on its own kind, growing even stronger. She explains this isn't a nest but a farm, and their only option is to retreat. Ida Racing calmly processes this terrifying news, preparing to make his decision. And his decision is to ignore the "we're all going to die" part and proceed anyway. The students are understandably horrified by their proctor's complete lack of a survival instinct. He explains that waiting will only make the monster stronger, so their only option is to attack now. He declares that this small team of students will be the ones to take down the S+ threat. Kurobo Higui can only stare at his own empty hand, feeling utterly useless in this situation. But his inner dragon appears, smugly predicting he'll soon be begging for its power. He clenches his fist, refusing to give in to the despair or the temptation. The pressure of the mission and his inner conflict is clearly getting to him. The other students question his sanity as he grapples with his own fear. He admits he was terrified, his fist clenched in a silent battle. But with a familiar, defiant grin, he declares he'll do what he's always done. He vows to face the S+ threat, his conviction unwavering. Hyuga Orin watches, stunned by his impossible courage. His words cut through her own fear, a small smile forming on her face. Inspired, she steps forward, volunteering to lead the charge as an S ranker. Ida Racing listens, his expression unreadable as she accepts the suicide mission. He accepts her offer, telling her to set an example for the others. As she prepares to enter, Kurobo Higui calls out her name, stopping her in her tracks. He tells her to be careful, but she's already leaping into the darkness. She lands, gathering her focus and a massive amount of energy. The air crackles as the S-rank prodigy prepares to go all out. Kurobo Higui watches, realizing she's drawing in an incredible amount of power. Her eyes snap open, filled with a cold, unwavering resolve. With a shout, she unleashes a torrent of pure, freezing energy. The attack slams into the ground, a beacon of light in the dark cave. A shock wave of ice erupts, a blizzard of destruction tearing through the nest. The wave of absolute zero expands, a promise of a very bad day for the local wildlife. And the first wave of bipedal ants is flash frozen and shattered in an instant. The ice tears through the horde, shattering the monsters into frozen fragments. In an instant, the entire cave entrance is sealed in a tomb of absolute zero. The sheer scale of her power is a spectacle of beautiful, cold destruction. Her classmates can only stare, stunned by the sight of the frozen wasteland. Unagi explains it's not just ice. She's neutralized the toxic air and frozen every Eva inside. This is the true power of her alpha ability, to stop everything the cold air touches. Kurobo Higui finally understands the terrifying power of a true S-ranker. Ida Racing seizes the moment, rallying the stunned students for the coming assault. He declares that Hyuga has leveled the playing field, allowing them to use their full power. With 2 S-rankers on their side, he roars that this battle is now theirs to win. He rallies his troops, pointing to Unagi's site and the elite survivors. He claims they have the advantage, despite facing 2 legendary monsters. He and Hyuga will take the S+, leaving the S-class queen to the students. With their pride on the line, the students roar in unified agreement. And with that, the small team charges into the frozen heart of the nest. But deep inside, a monstrous grin awaits their arrival. The humanoid Eva seems to be anticipating their attack with glee. It crouches over its latest meal, sensing its next victims are on their way. The students sprint through the icy tunnels, their plan, a quick, clean kill. Led by their S-rank proctors, they charge deeper into the alien labyrinth. Kurobo Higui sprints through the frozen labyrinth, his eyes wide. He marvels at the sheer scale of Hyuga's power, a testament to a true S-ranker. Up ahead, Unagi navigates the icy tunnels as Ida Racing follows her lead. But her psychic sight reveals a sudden deadly ambush from above. An unfrozen Eva lunges from the ceiling, its scythe-like arm ready to strike. But one of the B-rank students, Tada Yoshihito, steps up to intercept. He unleashes a rapid-fire barrage of energy, blasting the monster back. Another student, Momokawa Koishi, turns a second Eva to stone with a single touch. Tsukuda Ritsu follows up, slicing a third beast in half with a scythe of pure energy. And the A-ranker, Mukumoto Hazel, finishes the last one with a devastating explosive kick. Yomino Zen traps another in a prison of water, barely looking up from his book, while Iwatake Ken shatters one with a rock-hard fist. Kurobo Higui can only watch, stunned by their efficiency. He realizes these elite students are on a completely different level. Inspired, he vows to keep up, if he can just figure out how. Ida Rasen orders the students to clear the remaining threats. But as they advance, he senses something is terribly wrong. He asks Hyuga if her attack missed any, but she's certain it didn't. Unagi confirms it with her own observation. The nest was empty, which leads to a terrifying conclusion. The queen is breeding new soldiers. But as they sprint deeper, a sudden tremor shakes the very ground beneath them. Kanei shouts in alarm, questioning the source of the violent shaking. Mukomoto Hazel looks back in horror, realizing their only exit is collapsing. Unagi activates her celestial observation, trying to get a read on the new threat. A massive chunk of the ceiling gives way, plummeting towards the entrance. The path behind them is completely sealed by a wall of fallen rock. The students realize with dawning horror that they are now trapped. So much for a quick in-and-out mission. But their problems are just beginning, as Hyuga's ice wall begins to crack. The fractures spread like lightning across the frozen surface, and with a deafening roar, her absolute zero defense shatters into a million pieces. The students are thrown off balance as the ice shatters around them. Hyuga realizes with horror her ultimate attack was just cancelled. Unagi detects an overwhelming surge of star elements, and the source of that power makes its grand, unwelcome entrance. The S+ humanoid Eva, and it looks absolutely thrilled to see them. Kanei panics, realizing the monster is now blocking their only way out. Unagi explains the horrifying truth. They've been lured into a trap. The monster used the frozen Evas as bait, then circled around to seal their fate. This thing is smarter than half the student body. An S+ Eva with intelligence, a terrifying combination. Even the stoic Ida Rasen can only curse their impossible situation. Enraged, Tada Yoshihito tries to unleash his power, but his alpha ability sputters and dies in his hands. And the humanoid Eva strikes with blinding, casual speed. It looms over its victim, a god of pure, silent violence. His classmates can only watch, frozen in absolute terror. The team's formation shatters as they scream his name. Tsukudaritsu realizes the air is now toxic to their powers. But Ida Rasen roars for them to use their element stones. The survivors rally, drawing power from their emergency reserves. But the monster just watches, its inaction more terrifying than any attack. Mukomoto Hazel points out the obvious. Their emergency fuel won't last forever. Ida Rasen admits he has a last resort, but it comes at a heavy cost. But Kurobo Higui steps forward, believing his own power is the key. He unleashes his black hole, a vortex of pure, consuming energy. The tiny void begins to drink the toxic air, pulling in the star elements. Ida Rasen realizes the impossible. The kid is clearing the air for them. With the toxic energy gone, their own powers roar back to life. He roars a new command. Protect Kurobo Higui at all costs. The powerless janitor has just become the team's living power source. But the humanoid Eva just watches, its silence more menacing than any roar. Ida Rasen roars the plan. The two S-rankers will take down the humanoid. With a unified shout, they charge headfirst into the jaws of death. Two lone soldiers against a monster of impossible scale. Hyuga gathers her focus, the air around her crackling with cold. She unleashes her absolute ice wall, a wave of frozen spikes erupting from the ground. The attack slams into the beast, attempting to trap it in a cage of absolute zero. But the monster just grins, completely unfazed by her S-rank assault. Ida Rasen leaps into the air, preparing his own devastating follow-up. He gathers a swirling sphere of pure destructive energy in his palm, and with a roar, he unleashes a torrent of his own S-rank power. His attack is a blade of pure, compressed air, a slash of green energy, and it tears the humanoid Eva to pieces in a single decisive strike. Ida Rasen stands victorious, declaring that together, humanity can overcome any threat. The other students are in awe, recognizing his legendary air slash ability. He crushes the monster's head under his boot, a final act of dominance. But he's not taking any chances, preparing to obliterate what's left. Suddenly, a sinister laugh echoes from the dismembered corpse. The Eva's severed head reanimates with a terrifying manic grin, and with a single invisible blow, it sends the S-ranker flying. Ida Rasen is slammed into the wall, his victory lasting all of 5 seconds. Hyuga screams his name, horrified by the sudden, brutal reversal. The severed pieces of the monster begin to writhe and reform. Its flesh pulls together, a grotesque display of rapid regeneration. It casually reattaches its own head because of course it can, and just like that, the monster is back in one piece, good as new. Hyuga can only stare, her mind struggling to process the impossible. The fatal wound from the S-ranker's attack is completely gone. The monster declares its hunger, its power now fully restored, and its glowing eyes lock onto the buffet of students before it. Mukomoto Hazel screams for the others to form a defensive line. But Kurobohi Gui strains, the toxic energy he's absorbing taking a heavy toll. He collapses to the ground, screaming as the power overloads his system. Mukomoto Hazel turns in alarm as their living power source suddenly goes offline. He writhes in agony, the mark on his palm glowing with a dangerous blue light. She realizes with horror that he's absorbed too much of the toxic energy. And the humanoid Eva has finally decided to stop spectating. It moves with blinding speed, striking down Yomino Zen from behind. Enraged, Tsukuda Ritsu unleashes his own ultimate attack, the Star Scythe. His spectral blade takes shape, a weapon of pure concentrated energy. But his power fizzles out, his emergency element stone suddenly useless. The monster strikes again, taking down Tada Yoshihito from behind. He collapses to the ground, his emergency power source now useless. The humanoid looms over him, mocking his reliance on a crutch. It flashes a terrifying grin, clearly enjoying the one-sided hunt. The others realize the horrifying truth. Their powers are being actively suppressed. But Hyuga Orion refuses to back down, unleashing a storm of ice. 1,000 frozen pillars slam into the S+ monster. The beast shatters her attack with a single contemptuous step. So much for that plan. Hyuga stands as the last line of defense for her terrified classmates. She orders a full retreat, vowing to hold the monster off herself. The humanoid Eva just watches, its grin widening with sadistic glee. But a new sound echoes as more monsters, glowing with green energy, arrive. The students are completely surrounded, the trap finally sprung. With Hyuga's ice gone, the full might of the nest descends upon them. The humanoid declares that now it can finally enjoy its meal. The remaining students fall to their knees, their hope completely extinguished. But Kurobohi Gui grits his teeth, still fighting the power coursing through him. The new horde lunges, and the students are thrown into a desperate, losing battle. Apparently, the buffet is now open. Hyuga summons a shield of ice, still protecting her classmates to the last. But Kani is sent flying, the first of the survivors to fall. Tada Yoshihito screams in despair, blaming himself for their failure. But one of the smaller Evas moves in for the kill. Tsukuda Ritsu and Momokawa Koishi can only watch, helpless. The monster raises its blade, ready to execute the fallen students. It brings its scythe down on Tada Yoshihito, a final, merciless blow. He can only shut his eyes, accepting his fate. The attack connects in a brutal, final impact. But in the darkness, a familiar white eye snaps open. Kurobohi Gui stands, his body now a vessel for an ancient power. His inner world awakens, the dragon's power finally unleashed. Kurobohi Gui's consciousness drifts in a familiar, dark expanse. The dragon spirit appears, declaring the prophesied time has arrived. It addresses him as the strongest species, much to his confusion. The spirit tells him to face the reality of their dire situation. He's forced to watch as his classmate faces certain death. The dragon offers a simple deal, his body in exchange for their lives. But Kurobohi rejects the offer, demanding the power without the price. The spirit scoffs, questioning if he truly understands their dynamic. It boasts that with his body it can regenerate from any attack. It then plays its final card, showing him a vision of Hyuga in peril. Hyuga's ice shield cracks under the relentless, overwhelming assault. Tada Yoshihito can only scream as another Eva moves in for the kill. His classmates can only watch, their own powers completely suppressed. The spirit reveals its trump card. It knows who he's fighting for. Emotional blackmail, a classic. Kurobohi Gui is trapped, his resolve finally beginning to crack. It roars in his mind, demanding he finally accept who's in charge. His spirit stands before the colossal beast, a final, impossible choice. The weight of his friends' lives rests on his powerless shoulders. With no other option, he finally agrees to the devil's bargain. The dragon spirit's eyes glow, its long-awaited victory finally at hand. But he adds a condition, reminding the dragon of their last encounter. This is a temporary loan, and his friends are strictly off-limits. The dragon agrees, its pride as the strongest species on the line. Back in reality, the scythe descends upon his helpless classmates. But a new, terrifying confidence spreads across Kurobohi's face. With glowing eyes, he catches the blade with his bare hand. The monster's overwhelming power is stopped dead in its tracks. Looks like the janitor just got a serious upgrade. He then swings the blade, unleashing a torrent of raw energy. The attack tears through the horde, a casual display of immense power, and the monsters are obliterated in a single devastating strike. Hyuga is thrown to the ground by the sheer force of the blast. She recognizes the overwhelming energy, a power she thought was sealed away. The air itself crackles, a storm of raw, untamed star elements. A brilliant pillar of light erupts, a beacon of absolute destruction. From the light, a new figure emerges, the dragon's power finally unleashed. The spirit relishes its newfound freedom, a manic grin on Kurobohi's face. It recalls being sealed away, Its power once contained by the boy's own ability, but now with full control, that power is his to command. He decides to take his new body for a little test drive, and the remaining Evas are about to become his unwilling sparring partners. The spirit moves through the smoke, eager to test its new vessel. It grabs a nearby Eva, a manic grin spreading across Kurobohi's face. With a single punch, it obliterates the monster in a flash of blue light. The spirit inspects its hand, pleased with the body's impressive durability. Another Eva lunges, but the possessed boy seems utterly unimpressed. He counters with a devastating kick, a blur of motion and raw power. The monster is sent flying, its body shattering from the sheer force. The spirit stands amidst the carnage, satisfied with the body's reaction time. But the rest of the horde swarms forward, a sea of screeching monsters. The dragon scoffs at the weaklings, ready to demonstrate what true power is. He lunges forward, a blur of blue light and manic energy. The spirit squares off against a spider-like Eva, ready for a real fight. He tears through the horde, a whirlwind of fists and feet. The dragon roars in triumph, reveling in its newfound freedom. But the humanoid Eva watches from the sidelines, its gaze fixed on something else. Reflected in its eye is the S-ranker, Ida Raisin, glowing with power. The proctor is suddenly caught in a torrent of overwhelming energy. He struggles against the immense force, stunned by its sheer scale. A single destructive command echoes through the raw power. He clutches his head, realizing he's hearing the voice of the strongest species. Unagi explains the black hole separated the dragon's soul from its body. Ida Raisin realizes that sealed power is now fueling the possessed boy. A system window confirms the release rate is a tiny fraction of a percent, but even that small number is enough to shock the S-ranker. He recalls the first Eva fight, where the rate was even lower. A grim warning appears. At just 1%, the beast will be fully unleashed. Ida Raisin panics, realizing how close they are to total catastrophe. Back in the cave, the possessed Kurobohi continues his brutal rampage. He stands on a mountain of corpses, bored by the lack of a real challenge. His attention finally turns to the real boss, the S+ humanoid Eva. The dragon spirit asks if the S+ Eva can offer a real fight. The humanoid seems to recognize its true opponent, the strongest species. But in his mind, Kurobohi's spirit realizes the horrifying truth. His consciousness is dragged towards the source of the chaos. The black sphere containing the dragon's soul is beginning to crack. He can only watch in horror as his inner prison shatters. The dragon gloats that a tiny crack is all it needs to break free. So much for that binding contract. Kurobohi realizes he's been played from the very beginning. With a roar of defiance, he vows to take his body back. He charges towards the light, fighting for control of his own soul. He remembers his last escape, a hole back to reality. With a surge of hope, he sprints towards his only exit. But he slams into something, recoiling from the impact. He questions the invisible barrier blocking his path. Undeterred, he makes another desperate leap for freedom. His hand connects with the unseen wall once more. He realizes with dawning horror that he's been locked out. A system message confirms the dragon's power has left no room for him. The horrifying reality sinks in. He can't take his body back. Meanwhile, the dragon stands victorious, facing its true opponent. The dragon spirit stands victorious, ready for the main event. It relishes having a physical form again, eager to savor the coming battle. The humanoid Eva recognizes its true opponent, the legendary strongest species. The dragon spirit is amused, noting the monster has become quite talkative. The humanoid seems to contemplate the concept of happiness, and its version of happiness involves powering up for a fight. Its body begins to contort and grow, preparing for the clash. The transformation continues, its form becoming even more monstrous. It declares its intent to devour the dragon and claim its power. Ambition, you gotta love it. A colossal sphere of destructive energy gathers for its first attack. The sheer force of its transformation sends the students flying. Momokawa realizes this monster can consume star elements to evolve. Its new form radiates a power that dwarfs even the S-rankers. But the dragon spirit just smirks, amused by the monster's threat. It declares the real fight, a true deathmatch, can finally begin. But before they can clash, Ida Raisin unleashes his own spectral beast. A desperate last-ditch attack from the fallen S-ranker. The possessed Kurobohi Gui shatters the attack with a casual gesture. So much for the S-rank cavalry. The humanoid Eva seizes the opening, unleashing a devastating strike. But the dragon spirit turns to meet it, completely unimpressed. The dragon spirit meets the monster's charge head-on, a blur of blue energy. Their fists collide, shattering the remnants of the S-ranker's attack. A shockwave of pure power erupts from the point of impact. The entire cave is engulfed in a blinding flash of destructive light. But the dragon spirit holds its ground, a manic grin on Kurobohi's face. It declares this is a true deathmatch, finally a worthy opponent. The spirit laughs, easily fending off the monster's multiple limbs. This is clearly its idea of a good time. The sheer force of their battle causes the entire cave to tremble. The students realize with horror that the cavern is about to collapse on top of them. Tsukuda Ritsu questions if Kurobohi was always this strong, completely baffled by the sudden power-up. Kani realizes this raw power is nothing like the ability Kurobohi used before. Mukomoto Hazel screams for the others to retreat while they still can. She insists their only priority now is to survive and report back. She tells Hyuga to use her power to blast open their sealed exit. But the possessed Kurobohi Gui gathers a sphere of raw blue energy. He unleashes a torrent of power, not at the monsters, but at the exit. The energy solidifies into a barrage of sharp, crystalline spikes, and their only escape route is sealed even tighter than before. The dragon spirit declares that no one is leaving this cave. It grins, telling the humans to stay put and enjoy the show. Mukomoto Hazel and Momokawa Koishi can only watch in horror. The humanoid Eva taunts him for being distracted during their fight, but the dragon spirit's fist connects with a brutal, overwhelming impact. He follows through with the blow, a manic grin on his borrowed face, and unleashes a devastating beam of pure, concentrated energy. The spirit complains the surprise attack made it use too much force. It scoffs that even an S+ Eva is no match for its true power. With the monster gone, its attention turns to the terrified survivors. Looks like the show isn't over yet. It promises to torture them all, wanting the real Kurobohi to watch in despair. The students realize the monster they were saved from was the lesser of two evils. Kurobohi's spirit screams, reminding the dragon of its broken promise. The spirit scoffs, calling him a fool for trusting the king of Evas. He clenches his fist, his rage boiling over at the betrayal. He can only scream in frustration, trapped in his own mind. He makes another desperate charge towards the light, his only exit. But he's thrown back again by the invisible barrier. His fist slams against the wall, a prisoner in his own soul. He pounds on the barrier, his desperation growing with every second. He begs the system to remove the wall and return him to his body, but he remains trapped, a ghost watching his own life unfold. The dragon spirit mocks Kurobohi's trapped soul from within. Back in reality, the possessed boy turns to his terrified classmates. He sees them not as friends, but as toys for his amusement. Kani clutches his handkerchief, his fear turning into desperation. He screams for his friend to fight back, to return to his senses. But the spirit scoffs, declaring itself the strongest species. The others are stunned, realizing the horrifying truth of the possession. Kani connects the dots, the impossible words echoing in his mind. A torrent of raw, untamed energy erupts from the possessed boy. He flexes his power, asking if they can feel what a real god is like. Kani recognizes the overwhelming power, the same as the monster that attacked their school. The dragon spirit smirks, a new, terrible idea forming in its mind. It promises to burn them all to ash, a grim echo of its last rampage. As his power flares, Kani can only scream, realizing the monster is now wearing his friend's face. But a new power cuts through the chaos, a vortex of freezing energy. Hyuga unleashes her own ultimate attack, the Ice Star. The possessed boy is instantly trapped in a cage of absolute zero. The S-rank prodigy stands firm, having frozen the threat in its tracks. A bold move considering who she's up against. She orders the others to retreat, vowing to hold off the monster herself. Her classmates can only watch in horror, screaming her name as she faces the god-tier threat alone. Kani pleads with her to escape, insisting they should all survive together. But Hyuga recalls her solemn vow to stop Kurobohi if he ever lost control. She knows her ice prison won't hold the monster for very long, so she turns her remaining power towards their only way out, unleashing 1,000 pillars of ice at the sealed exit. The attack shatters the rock wall the dragon spirit created. A blizzard of destruction tears through the rubble. And just like that, a path to freedom is cleared. Guess she's good for more than just making ice cubes. Mukomoto Hazel rallies the survivors, vowing not to waste her sacrifice. Hyuga stands guard as her classmates make a desperate run for it. Hyuga stands alone, her duty clear as she faces the frozen monster. But her absolute zero prison shatters in a deafening explosion. The possessed boy emerges, mocking her pathetic attempt to stop him. The S-rank prodigy can only stare, her ultimate attack utterly useless. He scoffs that letting the others escape has changed nothing. With a manic grin, he declares his intent to burn the world to ash. But first, he promises to have a little fun with her. He'll torture her just to watch the real Kurobohi suffer. Well, that's just evil. The chilling threat hits Hyuga harder than any physical blow. She grits her teeth, facing a monster that attacks the body and the soul. But Hyuga extends a hand, challenging the monster wearing her friend's face. She gathers all her remaining power, vowing to stop him at any cost. The dragon spirit just smirks, impressed by the quality of her energy. He taunts her, saying her resolve makes her a more entertaining toy. He unleashes his own power, a storm of blue energy erupting around him. The spirit stands, a god of destruction in a borrowed body. A system warning flashes. The release rate is nearing a critical 1%. Ida Racing sees the alert, realizing the monster's true body is about to break free. A vision of the original dragon appears, a beast that spells extinction for humanity. The S-ranker is blasted back by the sheer force of the dragon's awakening power. A system window appears, initiating a final terrifying countdown. Trapped in his mind, Kurobohi Gui panics, desperate to stop the clock. But the system offers a new unknown option: Apex Predator Reversal Mode. He stares at the prompt, completely baffled by this last-ditch power-up. The system explains the price. His own body will be consumed and erased. The horrifying reality of the choice sinks in. To save the world, he would have to simply disappear. A pretty steep price for a former janitor. And all the while, the clock ticks down to the dragon's full release. Back in the cave, the possessed Kurobohi radiates an unstoppable power. Hyuga realizes her ultimate attack was just a speed bump for a true god. She knows she needs a single, concentrated attack to break through. But she questions if she can even hit the monster wearing his face. She grits her teeth, the name Kurobohi a pained whisper. Her mind flashes back to the powerless boy who saved her life. Inspired by his resolve, she declares she has no choice but to fight. She gathers all her remaining power into a single crystalline point. The dragon spirit watches, intrigued by her desperate gambit. With a sinister grin, he decides to copy her little trick. Because of course he does. He gathers a colossal sphere of raw, destructive energy, and prepares to show her the difference between an S rank and a god. The dragon spirit gathers a sphere of its own raw, destructive power. He clenches his fist, condensing the energy into a single, terrifying point. With a condescending smirk, he points, mocking the little girl before him. He challenges her to a clash, a battle she knows she cannot possibly win. Hyuga grits her teeth, the sheer pressure of his aura overwhelming her. She realizes her power would be obliterated against such a massive force. She knows she can't meet him head-on. She has to find another way. But against a god, she struggles to find any opening at all. Suddenly, an explosion rocks the cavern from a different direction. Ida Racing emerges from the rubble, battered but not yet broken. He grits his teeth, finally acknowledging the true power of the strongest species. With a roar, he unleashes one last desperate attack on the possessed boy. But the dragon spirit just smirks, mocking his persistent but slow movements. Meanwhile, the humanoid Ava roars, drawn to the overwhelming power. It transforms, vowing to devour the dragon and claim its strength for itself. The two S+ threats converge on the possessed boy in a chaotic clash. But the dragon spirit easily catches the monster's punch, finding the whole thing rather entertaining. Ida Racing's attack screams forward, his final gambit in the air. Looks like everyone wants a piece of our boy today. The spirit casually deflects the S-ranker's power with a single hand. He stands between his two opponents, effortlessly handling them both. Hyuga sees her opening, a single chance to end this nightmare. But she hesitates, knowing this attack will kill Kurobohi Gui for good. His own words echo in her mind. A person's worth is in their actions. She remembers the boy who saved her, the one who never gave up. With a new resolve, she vows to do what she can, just like he would. The dragon spirit mocks her, but she pushes through the fear and pressure. She unleashes her ultimate attack, a star of pure, absolute zero. Her attack, Pluto's star, slams directly into the monster's chest. The possessed boy grunts in pain as the ice energy spreads through him. Hyuga watches, exhausted but hopeful, believing her attack has finally hit its mark. The possessed boy roars in pain as the ice spreads through his chest. But the dragon spirit's response is to rip off its own arm. You know, a totally normal reaction. It hurls the severed limb, now a bomb of pure energy at the other S-ranker. The attack screams towards Ida Racing, a last-ditch, desperate gambit. The S-ranker is engulfed in the blast, caught completely off guard. The resulting explosion rocks the cavern, a shockwave of raw, untamed power. Ida Racing realizes the cave is about to collapse on top of them all. But the dragon spirit just smirks, acknowledging her direct hit to the heart. It notes her power is trying to suppress his own, a futile effort. With a terrifying grin, he praises her ability, his tone pure mockery. Hyuga grits her teeth, acknowledging the true power of an S-ranker. But the dragon spirit just smirks, completely unimpressed by her efforts. The ice in his chest shatters, his own power overwhelming her attack. His arm morphs into a monstrous claw, free from her icy prison. He taunts her, saying she was just a second too slow to truly stop him. A massive spectral dragon begins to form around his body. With glowing eyes, he declares it's time for his true release. Hyuga can only stare in horror, her last gambit having failed spectacularly. Trapped in his mind, Kurobohi Gui faces his final, terrible choice. And the countdown to the end of the world continues to tick away. He realizes this choice will erase not just him, but the dragon as well. But his mind flashes back to his mother, his reason for fighting. He sees a vision of Hyuga facing the monster in his body. He knows that if he hesitates, everyone he cares about will die. His mother's words echo in his mind, a final source of strength. Her wisdom cuts through his fear, his resolve hardening. With a final, defiant smile, he accepts his fate. He'll do what he's always done, whatever he can, no matter the cost. With a single touch, he activates the Apex Predator reversal mode. The system shatters, his final choice now irreversible. The dragon's power erupts, twisting Kurobohi's body into a terrifying new form. With a manic grin, the spirit declares its full release is finally at hand. Hyuga can only stare up in horror at the monster he has become. The S-rank prodigy is paralyzed by the sheer, overwhelming power, but the dragon questions why its body isn't fully transforming as it should. The confusion is quickly replaced by a familiar, arrogant grin. It roars that as the strongest species, no one can stop its return. He stands, a god of destruction reveling in his newfound power. He declares the time for games is over. He'll burn the world to ash, and he's decided to start with the strongest humans in the room. Fun times for everyone. The two S-rankers stand together, humanity's last line of defense. The dragon spirit offers a twisted respect, promising a quick annihilation. Hyuga can only watch in despair, realizing they have no way to win. With a final, arrogant farewell, he prepares to end the fight for good. But just as he attacks, his own body begins to betray him. A familiar black hole erupts from his chest, a power he can't control. He screams in agony as the void begins to consume him from the inside out. The spirit recognizes this power, the same one that sealed him away before. The Apex Predator ability has activated, turning his own body into a cage. The two S-rankers can only stare, completely baffled by this sudden plot twist. Hyuga reaches out, her hand trembling in the chaotic aftermath. But Ida Raisin suddenly scoops her up, ignoring her shocked protests. He declares their only option is a full retreat, and he's their fastest way out. With a burst of speed, he carries them both through the collapsing cavern. They become a green blur, escaping the tomb that was once the Eva nest. He admits this is all they can do. The monster is beyond their power. He explains that to defeat the strongest species, they'll need all 10 S-rankers. Hyuga lies on the ground, defeated but accepting the grim reality. But just as he turns, she's already back on her feet, surprising him. She thanks him for the rescue, but declares she'll run on her own from now on. Ida Raisin offers a rare compliment, noting her improved resolve. But Hyuga's mind is fixed on Kurobohi, vowing to stop the monster inside. She asks him to wait for her, a promise to save him from himself. Back in the collapsing cave, the dragon spirit roars in agony. It curses the Apex Predator ability for its terrible, terrible timing. The possessed boy stumbles, his own body turning against him. But his rage quickly turns into a manic, confident grin. He declares himself the king of Evas, ready to fight his own prison. With a roar, he unleashes his power against Kurobohi Gui's ability. His own energy fights back, trying to close the very void that contains him. The possessed boy strains, his own body now a battlefield. The dragon spirit grins, vowing to regenerate faster than he can be consumed. But the void in his chest expands, pulling him apart from the inside. He roars, declaring a final, desperate game to see who disappears first. But a new light erupts, a counterforce to the consuming darkness. The black holes multiply, tearing at his very existence. But the dragon's own power fights back, a star against the void. The Apex Predator ability strains, trying to devour the god within. Apparently, indigestion is a cosmic problem, but the spirit scoffs, remembering it has been eaten once before. With a manic laugh, it declares this battle is already won. The Apex Predator ability tears through the possessed boy's body. In his mind, Kurobohi's spirit faces the dragon's true form. He notes the dragon's power has been cut off, a quiet before the storm. But the strongest species roars, preparing for a final, desperate fight. The Apex Predator ability attacks the dragon's very soul. The spirit curses, feeling the pain of its vessel being torn apart. But Kurobohi's spirit just smirks, enjoying a little shared suffering. The dragon questions this power, calling it an inconvenient pest. Kurobohi Gui simply declares that this is the end for both of them. The King of Evas can only glare, its reign cut short by a janitor's will. For the first time in its eons of existence, the King of Evas experiences pain. Kurobohi's spirit taunts the beast, asking if this is its first time. The dragon admits that until this moment, nothing could ever harm it. The Apex Predator ability continues to tear into its very soul. The beast roars in agony as the void consumes its essence, but its roar of agony quickly fades into a strange acceptance. It finally understands the pain that humans have endured all this time. Kurobohi's spirit just smiles, his own words echoing in the void. He declares that in a battle of will, he will never lose. and the strongest species finally admits its defeat. The dragon offers a final, grudging respect to its mortal vessel. It calls him by his full name, a strange moment of recognition. But Kuroboi's expression shifts into a wide, knowing grin. He throws the dragon's own title right back in its face. The King of Evas can only watch as its reign comes to an end. The apex predator ability rushes forward to finish its work. The void consumes the ancient beast, erasing it from existence. The strongest species is reduced to nothing but fading light. A final system message confirms the termination of the reversal mode. And back in the real world, the cavern finally collapses completely. The ground trembles as the cavern implodes upon itself. The survivors can only watch as their battlefield becomes a tomb. Kaney calls out for Hyuga, fearing she was left behind in the chaos. But a single, determined step lands just outside the rubble. Hyuga and Ida Racen emerge, battered but miraculously alive. The S-ranker confirms their survival, his face a mask of grim relief. But Kaney's relief turns to dread as he asks about Kurobo Higui. Mukamoto Hazel screams that the boy they knew is gone, replaced by an Eva. Kaney is stunned, struggling to accept the horrifying accusation. He remembers the friend who believed in him, refusing to see a monster. But Kaney refuses to believe it, insisting his friend could never be a monster. Hyuga steps in, explaining his black hole sealed the beast from Hachi. Hazel's eyes widen, remembering the dragon that attacked their school. She explains he released it to save them, but lost control of the power. Ida Racen can only grit his teeth, his anger palpable. He scoffs at the lame guy, clearly a big fan of positive reinforcement. He reports their failure, demanding to know about reinforcements. The principal's aide confirms a unit is on its way, led by the commander himself. But Unagi looks on, suggesting reinforcements may not be necessary. Ida demands to know what she means, turning to the collapsed nest. Unagi confirms the worst. Both Kurobo Higui and the dragon are gone. Hyuga is stunned by the word eliminated, refusing to believe it. Kaney collapses in despair, his friend's name a broken whisper. The other survivors can only stand in grim, silent acknowledgement of their loss. But Ida Racen roars for them to stand, calling them pathetic. A real motivational speaker, this one. Kaney screams back, ashamed that they, the elite, were saved by an unranked boy. Ida Racen channels their shame into a vow to grow strong enough to defeat any threat. His words seem to strike a chord with the remaining students. And the survivors roar back in unified agreement, their resolve hardened. But Hyuga turns back to the tomb of rock, whispering a final, pained farewell. As Hyuga stands in the ruins, her mind flashes back to the boy she knew, the one who stood before a monster to protect her when he was powerless, the one who fought with nothing but grit and a stubborn refusal to die. She remembers the brief moments of peace they shared, and the day he first discovered the strange power in his hand. She recalls his pride on his first day, a future he fought so hard for. His mother's words, the creed he lived by, echo in her memory. And Hyuga refuses to believe he's gone, whispering his name to the wind. Elsewhere under a golden sky, a new day dawns on an old building. And inside, a woman in a wheelchair looks out, her eyes wide with disbelief. She questions the sudden disappearance of the boy who was the strongest species. Her precognition has failed, and a future she never saw is now unfolding. A sudden, overwhelming flood of new visions assaults her mind. She stares out the window, trying to decipher the meaning of 5 shooting stars. 1 year later, the city is once again under siege by an Eva invasion. A colossal S-class rock monster stands as the new harbinger of destruction. A father and his young daughter are trapped in the street, paralyzed by fear. He vows to protect her, but she reminds him he's only an E-ranker. Thanks for the vote of confidence, kid. The monster raises a massive blade, preparing to crush the 2 civilians. With no other option, the father shields his daughter with his own body. But just as the blow is about to land, a new power enters the fray. A massive arrow of pure, freezing energy screams through the sky. It strikes the monster's head with pinpoint, devastating accuracy. And in an instant, the S-class beast is completely frozen solid. The father looks up in disbelief as a voice apologizes for the delay. He recognizes the familiar face of their city's greatest protector. It's Hyuga Orion, now humanity's 3rd strongest S-ranker. Looks like the last year has been busy for her. The little girl runs to her savior, her fear replaced by pure awe. Hyuga offers a rare, gentle smile, reassuring the child that she's safe. She directs them to an evacuation point, her duty far from over. She declares the invading Evas will be handled by her new elite unit, the Hyuga Squad. The father and daughter offer their heartfelt thanks. Hyuga waves them off, a hero in her own right. But the battle is far from over as a new threat arrives. A swarm of insect-like Evas descends upon the city. Hyuga rallies her team, ready to defend their home. Her squad charges forward, a well-oiled fighting machine, and Kaney Ibuku prepares an attack of his own, unleashing a barrage of black bubble bullets. Looks like his power got a serious upgrade. The attack connects, his bubbles hardening on impact. Kaney, now a full-fledged A-ranker, holds 2 monsters in place. Mukomoto Hazel roars, channeling her own explosive power. She shatters another beast with a single devastating punch. Hyuga leads the charge, her team moving with deadly efficiency. The Hyuga squad stands victorious over the frozen battlefield. She gives the order to report back to headquarters. A natural leader. Hyuga confirms the district is clear of all hostile EVAs. HQ acknowledges their success, ordering a prompt return. But Kaney is still the same old Kaney, crying in pure relief. Mukomoto Hazel is impressed by Kaney's sudden power boost. He credits Ida Raisin's hellish training for his newfound strength. But a shadow falls over his face as he recalls their past. He's just glad they're strong enough to never feel that helpless again. The memory of Kurobohi's sacrifice clearly still frustrates her. Hyuga agrees, calling him out for his reckless solo act. But she smiles, certain he'll make a dramatic return someday. Until then, she orders them to harvest the valuable element stones. Mukomoto gets a little too excited, ready to blow them all up. Hyuga stands atop the frozen beast, a silent, powerful guardian. In the year since the strongest species vanished, EVA attacks have intensified. But humanity has fought back, with S-rankers training a new generation of powerful students. The key to their success is new technology forged from the very element stones they harvest. This new tech has finally allowed humanity to launch a true counteroffensive against the EVAs. Hyuga acknowledges their progress, a quiet moment of satisfaction on the battlefield. But she's haunted by a prophecy. 5 more strongest species are on their way. Suddenly, an emergency broadcast cuts through the silence, a call for all S-rankers. The message concerns the mission to liberate District 1 from the EVAs. The news is good. The joint S-ranker team has already won. A decisive victory for humanity. Her squad celebrates the news, finishing half a day ahead of schedule. Guess the big leagues don't mess around. The S-ranker in charge announces the city is ready for reconstruction. With 5 of humanity's strongest on guard, it's now the safest place in the country. The 5th-ranked S-ranker, Tsuin Teruyo, celebrates their hard-won victory, while the 6th-ranker, Gozaki Jin, seethes with rage at the destruction. The 4th-ranker, Sokaritsu, offers a cold, simple vow of eradication, and the 8th-ranker, Yada Akira, is filled with youthful, unwavering confidence. Their leader, the 2nd-ranked Saiki Yuzun, vows to wipe the EVA vermin from their planet. A real go-getter, this one. The team roars in agreement, their victory a beacon of hope for humanity. But Hyuga can't shake a feeling of dread, sensing this was all too easy. As the flag of victory waves over the newly liberated district, at the academy, a memorial stone stands in solemn tribute to the fallen. And addressing the students is Ida Raisin, now humanity's #1 S-ranker. He stands before the entire student body, his voice echoing across the courtyard. He reminds them that today marks 1 year since the attack that claimed 58 lives. A tragedy that was only stopped by the sacrifice of one man, Kurobohi Gui. He recounts how Kurobohi vanished with the beast to end its destructive rampage, and he calls on them to honor that sacrifice by protecting humanity in his name. As they hold a moment of silence, some S-rankers are more emotional than others. But Hyuga holds on to her faith, believing he's still out there somewhere. His former classmates also remember the friend they lost 1 year ago. Ida Rasen ends the silence, declaring they've grown strong enough to reclaim their world. But he reveals a grim prophecy from a new S-ranker. 5 more strongest species are coming. He calls for even greater strength and teamwork to face this new apocalypse, and announces that all S-rankers will now personally oversee the students' training. His words ignite the crowd, who roar back with newfound determination. But in the crowd, a familiar and supposedly dead face watches on. Kurobohi Gui, looking very confused, asks what all the commotion is about. The student he asks turns around, his face a mask of pure disbelief. He screams Kurobohi's name, demanding to know why he isn't dead. A new S-ranker suddenly tackles him in a tearful hug, overjoyed that he's alive. Kurobohi Gui is stunned, recognizing the S-ranker as Hyuga Orin. She's overcome with emotion, crying in pure relief that he's alive. He awkwardly comforts her, thanking her for trying to save him back then. But her relief quickly turns to a chilling threat, warning him to never be so reckless again. Kaney and Unagi rush over, their faces alight with joy and disbelief. The other survivors of the Nest mission are right behind them, equally thrilled. He laughs, admitting he just noticed his new physique while they were mourning his death. Talk about awkward timing. From the crowd, Ida Rasen and the other students can only watch the impossible reunion. Unagi is still baffled, insisting she saw him vanish with the dragon. But a tiny, 3-eyed creature appears, telling Kurobohi to hurry up so they can have some fun. Hyuga stares, completely baffled by the strange new creature. Kurobohi is shocked she can even see his pint-sized companion. But Unagi's face is a mask of pure, dawning horror. She realizes the dragon's soul now has a physical and surprisingly cute body, but the reunion is cut short by a flash of green energy. Ida Rasen grabs Kurobohi Gui, his rage barely contained. Another S-ranker declares her intent to kill the tiny creature. In an instant, our boy is surrounded by all of humanity's strongest. So much for a warm welcome. Unagi realizes she just revealed his secret to the entire S-rank roster. Ida Rasen holds him fast, demanding answers with a deadly threat. Ida Rasen questions his identity, noting his body is unchanged from the possession. He warns that the wrong answer will mean death for both him and the tiny Eva. Hyuga watches in horror, but Kurobohi is stuck on a single detail. A year has passed. He explains that for him, it's only been 3 days since he woke up. He was buried in the collapsed cave, the tiny dragon trapped there with him. He's surprised anyone can even see his new companion, who seems ready to fight. He has no answers, only that he came to the school that built a memorial for him. Awkward. Unagi listens intently, her mind racing to process the impossible. She steps in, using her power to confirm that this is the real Kurobohi Gui. But her observation reveals a critical detail. His star element level is now 0, and the tiny dragon is just as powerless, a fact it finds deeply insulting. Ida Rasen scoffs, confirming they're both unranked nobodies. The second-ranked S-ranker, Saiki Yuzen, watches in cold silence. But the 8th ranker, Yada Akira, argues that rank doesn't matter here. They remind everyone of the 58 students killed by the strongest species, and that the principal resigned to take responsibility for the secret. They declare that if the monster is back, their only option is elimination. Kurobohi Gui listens, his expression hardening at the verdict. The S-ranker's duty is clear: protect humanity at any cost. But our boy just smirks, finding the threat of death interesting. He challenges all of humanity's strongest to try and take him down. Hyuga is stunned, sensing a sudden, terrifying shift in his aura. His eyes glow with a familiar power, his presence echoing the strongest species. But just as quickly, he snaps back to reality, confused by his own words. He frantically tries to take it all back, a sudden change in tune. He insists he's human, offering to prove it to the very confused S-rankers. He holds out his right hand, the former source of all his power. Hyuga can only stare, her expression shifting to one of pure shock. She realizes the black hole mark on his palm has completely vanished. Kurobohi Gui confirms it. The power that sealed the dragon is gone, and so are his abilities. He explains that while the creature is the strongest species, it's no longer a danger to anyone. Ida Rasen demands proof, refusing to take his word for it. But Kurobohi admits he has no basis, just a deep certainty. A real solid defense, that is. He recalls the dragon's final moments, a grudging respect between them. And with a confident smile, he declares the former god is okay now. The tiny apocalypse seems flustered by the sudden vote of confidence. But his words are met with a sudden, violent flash of energy. The S-rankers are thrown back, caught off guard by the attack. The 8th ranker, Yada Akira, roars that he's heard enough and will eliminate the threat himself. The green-haired S-ranker tries to stop his hot-headed comrade. But Yada Akira argues they can't risk a traitor with 5 more gods on the way. He moves with blinding speed, a blur of yellow lightning. The ground cracks under the sheer force of his charge. He appears instantly before Kurobohi Gui, his fist crackling with power. The attack connects, sending a shockwave of energy across the courtyard. Hyuga screams for him to run, convinced he's about to be killed. But the other S-rankers are stunned. The powerless boy just dodged their fastest member. Kurobohi is just as confused, wondering how his body moved on its own. Enraged, Akira screams at him to stop dodging, while our boy just wants everyone to calm down. But Kurobohi Gui is confused by a strange new perception. To him, the S-ranker's movements seem impossibly slow. He effortlessly dodges another blade of pure lightning. The other S-rankers watch, while our boy analyzes the deadly attack. Enraged, Akira unleashes a furious barrage of electric shocks. But Kurobohi sees every attack, his body moving on pure instinct. Hyuga can only stare, amazed by the impossible display. She questions how a powerless boy can dodge an S-ranker's full assault. But his tiny companion seems to know exactly what's going on. Looks like someone's holding out on us. Kurobohi realizes that despite the danger, he feels no fear at all. Enraged, Akira unleashes his full power, calling him a monster. But Kurobohi Gui just grins, finding the whole situation rather fun. He catches the S-ranker's electrified arm with his bare hand. He notes the electricity is weak, a minor sting at best. He calmly tells the struggling S-ranker to give up. With a tight grip, he insists he has no desire to fight. The S-ranker can only stare, his mind reeling in disbelief. But in his mind, a pair of glowing blue eyes snap open. A vision of the colossal dragon fills his entire world. Looks like someone's having a very bad day. The S-ranker collapses, screaming in pure, unadulterated terror. Kurobohi Gui stands confused as the S-ranker trembles on the ground. The other S-rankers are baffled, questioning how a simple touch caused this. He turns to his tiny companion, who seems to have a very big explanation. The dragon reveals the truth. Their bodies and souls have become mixed. A part of its soul is in him, and a part of his soul is in it. Kurobohi struggles to grasp the meaning of this cosmic Freaky Friday. The dragon declares that Kurobohi Gui is now a strongest species too. The horrifying realization sends our boy into a full-blown panic. He realizes he's no longer a hero, but a target for immediate elimination. The dragon's words hang in the air, sealing his new, terrifying fate. The S-rankers close in, their leader declaring Kurobohi a threat to be restrained. Our boy panics, the blue streak in his hair a sign of his new, unwanted status. But a new voice cuts through the tension, demanding they all wait. The second-ranked S-ranker is annoyed by the sudden interruption, but his annoyance quickly turns to pure, unadulterated shock. He recognizes the legendary Foreseer, the S-ranker Unagi Banri. She declares that Kurobohi Gui is not their enemy and orders them to stand down. Kurobohi is just as confused, wondering who his new defender is. But a familiar voice cheerfully introduces her long-lost twin sister. Apparently, Kurobohi is stunned, having no idea Unagi Senri even had a sister. Unagi explains their powers. She sees the present while her sister Banri sees the future. A flashback reveals they were known as the Twins of Fate, humanity's greatest assets. But Banri admits her precognition is flawed. She never saw the monster that took Kurobohi. Even her vision of 5 new gods is vague, but she's just received a new one. The other S-rankers are stunned by the sudden urgent revelation. Her vision shows a figure like Kurobohi Gui fighting against the strongest species. The green-haired S-ranker recognizes the weight of this new prophecy. Banri explains their powers combined, giving her a glimpse of the future through her sister's eyes. A real 2-for-1 psychic special. She acknowledges their fear that Kurobohi Gui is now a monster. But she declares this human-monster hybrid is humanity's only key to survival. But Kurobohi Gui cuts in, asking for a moment of their time. He asks the very basic question of what a strongest species even is. The Foreseer realizes they need to start from the very beginning. She lays out the simple math. A human can beat an Eva of the same rank. But S plus Evas are a different story, requiring a team of S-rankers. And then there's the strongest species, a threat that defies all known scales. His tiny companion looks smug, as if this is all common knowledge. Banri recounts the first attack, a battle that nearly wiped out humanity's strongest. She reveals the devastating cost. A single one of these beasts can mean extinction, which is why their only hope is the boy who is both human and monster. But their debate is cut short by a special alert echoing across the city. A massive beam of red energy descends from the heavens and slams into a nearby district with apocalyptic force. The impact site is just 50 kilometers from the academy. The local defense squad rushes towards the cloud of destruction. Their A-rank captain, Yoshino Susumu, fears the worst. His system confirms an S+ level threat has just appeared, and orders all A-rankers and below to evacuate immediately, so basically everyone here. From the smoke, a colossal draconic Eva emerges, its eyes glowing with malice. The captain realizes with dawning horror that one of the prophesied gods has arrived. The colossal beast roars, its body crackling with raw red energy. Its eyes glow with malice, a true predator in its natural element. The local soldiers can only scream as the monster descends upon them. They realize this isn't just an Eva, it's one of the strongest species. But a new sound cuts through the chaos, drawing their attention. A blinding light builds along the dragon's spine, a surge of raw power. The energy erupts, a beacon of destruction in the ruined city. And from the light, a new figure begins to tear its way out. So this thing is a living, breathing nesting doll of death. A horned humanoid being stands atop the beast, newly born into the world. He touches his throat, surprised by the sound of his own voice. The soldier stares up, recognizing the face of his own captain, Yoshino. The new god flexes, still adjusting to his borrowed physical form. He reveals he copied the body from the DNA of the human he devoured. The real Captain Yoshino can only scream, his terror absolute. The god looks down on the terrified soldier, a predator eyeing its prey. He declares his intent to enjoy this new world. In a genocidal, touristy kind of way. And his idea of fun is a simple hunt for the local wildlife. He moves with blinding speed, a blur of motion and malice. He grabs the captain, vowing to hunt the other 2 gods on this planet. And by devouring them, he plans to become king of the universe.